So welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Linda Brockbank, Chairman of the committee, and this meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel and will be archived for later viewing. Please can I remind members to use their virtual hand button to indicate you wish to speak. That's Councillor Rose trying to get hold of us. Councillor Shuttleworth, would you mind giving her a call, please, and just seeing if she's still struggling? Thank you. Okay, so yeah, just to remind members to use their virtual hand button when you wish to speak, whether or not it's part of the debate or on a procedural point. Can you also let me know if you intend leaving before the meeting ends so that Democratic Services can make a note of the time? And the same also applies if you arrive late. Well, before we begin, some introductions of the officers. We have Alex Strickland, who's our legal advisor. Neville Watson will be joining us shortly. He's the planning manager. We have Vicky Davis, who's Democratic Services Officer, and we have Hannah, who is our moderator for today. Everyone has seen the late information, so I won't delay the start of the meeting, but I will need to check that Councillor Rose has indeed seen the late information. So we'll carry on for the moment, Vicky, and then can I just ask Councillor Shuttleworth, did you get in touch with Councillor Rose? Is she okay to join?
Yeah, she's trying again, using the same code as I successfully. So
okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll would you like to? If we'll go on to the agenda anyway. Right. So, Ms. Davis, could you take us through any apologies, please, and any substitutes? And do you want to do the roll call as well?
Yes, please, Chair, if I can. So as far as I'm aware, we've just got apologies from Councillor Handley, and I don't think he has appointed a substitute. And if I can do a quick roll call, so if members could just unmute themselves and acknowledge that they're present when I call their name out. So, Chairman, obviously you're in attendance. Yeah. Councillor Brown.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Heseltine.
Present.
Councillor Liss.
Present.
Councillor Morell.
Present.
Councillor Place.
Present.
Councillor Pringle.
Present.
Councillor Rose, she's not with us just yet. Councillor Shuttleworth.
yes, present.
Councillor Sutcliffe. No. And Councillor Welsh.
Present.
Chairman, I do know that Councillor Sutcliffe was going to be with us today, so and I've just had an email from Neville Watson saying he's still having trouble getting in. So, Hannah, are you able to send him the link again, please? Would that be?
Yeah, I have sent him the link again, but I'll send it and ask if there's anything else I can do. I'll send a quick email.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Thank you.
Could I just quickly, Hannah, can you remind him that it's 0, not capital O?
I've done that, Councillor Brown. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. I just want to ask Ms. Muscroft if Mr. Watson isn't able to join us, are you happy to go to take the go in with the presentation? Are you?
Yeah. Yes, I am, Chair.
Okay. Is the first one Backgate at Ingleton? Is that one of yours? Are you case officer for that?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Right. So we'll carry on then. Have you finished your roll call, Ms Davis?
Yes, I have, Chairman, and I just wanted to mention that all members had been on mandatory planning training last week. So as far as I'm aware, everybody has confirmed that they've either done the training or read the documentation subsequent to that training. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, that's good. Thank you. We go on to confirmation of minutes. Now, there was an email sent round by Ms Davis on the 19th of November, which had a set of amended minutes in it. So I'm taking this vote for the amended minutes. They were amended to take into account comments made by council in relation to her view that Gallowby Flash should function as a wetland and retain its ephemeral characteristics. So could I have a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Brown is proposing and Councillor Shuttleworth is seconding. Thank you very much. Could we all just, could members just raise their hands if they're in agreement with the minutes, please, as amended? Thank you very much. That's unanimous.
That's it. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, still having problems. Public participation. Are there any members of the public, Ms Davis, who have asked to speak?
There are, Chairman, and it's for an item that's not appearing on the agenda, and I have got a statement to read out if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
So can I go ahead and do that then now?
Yes, I think because it's now almost quarter, so I think we've got to continue, and then we'll just have to hope that Councillor Rose and Mr Watson can join us.
Right, this is a statement from Jenny Andrews. She's a resident of Sturton with Thorby. At the end of the agenda, her application is approved under delegated powers. The conditions attached to the development at Townhouse Caravan Park 2020/21398/CND are on this list and have been recorded as discharged under delegated powers. I would like to make the committee aware that the conditions that have been discharged are not in accordance with the information presented to the Planning Committee, the Planning Inspector, and are contrary to much of the detail used by the applicant to justify the development in their own design and access statement. As following my letter of the 21st of October, no explanation for this action has been forthcoming. A formal complaint was made to the Chief Executive on the 2nd of November. This has been acknowledged, but no response has yet been received. I would also like the Planning Committee to be aware of application 2019/20076/FUL, land to the northwest of Clayhull, Broughton Road. Mandale Homes have submitted an application to build 41 homes. According to the planning portal, no decisions have been made and the application has no date to be presented to the Planning Committee. Despite this, Mandale Homes have opened a sales office on Belmont Bridge and are selling properties off plan. The first properties will apparently be available next summer. How can this be allowed to happen? There are processes that need to be followed in an open and transparent manner in order that the public can have any confidence in Craven Council's planning department. We cannot wait for the peer review to be published, as these planning decisions are avoiding scrutiny, happening now and will have a lasting impact on Skipton and its surrounding areas. And that concludes the statement, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, just in the absence of the planning manager, just to clarify on those two points that were raised. On the first one, I understand that there will be a written response issued by the planning manager on the matters raised. On the second one, I understand that the Section 106 agreement is in the process of being concluded, and that will be concluded shortly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Can I request, please, that written response from the planning manager, that all members of the planning committee are copied in on that response?
Yes, Chair. I think that's the intention. Thank you.
Thank you. And as far as the 106 is concerned, can we also be copied in? Can the planning committee also be copied in on that response?
I'll arrange for an update, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Does that conclude the public participation, Ms Davis?
It does, Chairman, though Councillor Pringle has just indicated his wish to speak. Thank
Could
you.
I have a point of clarification, please? The second one of those points, the Section 106, is about a planning application on the edge of Skipton. The application is before Creighton District Council, but we don't know whether it's coming before committee or not. Some members will remember I wrote to you about the highways position 3 or 4 months ago on this same application. Is what the solicitor is saying a Section 106 is being agreed? Does that mean that it's going to be dealt with under delegated powers rather than brought before committee? Because I would like to think that committee would see this application. The previous application for 20 houses went before committee, and I'm pretty certain that this one should, because it's in an open field beyond the bypass on the edge of Skipton. So I wouldn't want to think it was being done under delegated powers, but please can we have some clarification? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pringle. Really good questions there.
Chair, I think Andrea, were you indicating you wish to speak, Andrea?
Okay, thank you. I was just going to say, Miss Muscroft, before you speak, is Councillor Rose, as far as I understand it, is the ward member for the Mandale Homes application. And if she manages to join us, then perhaps we could ask Councillor Rose to well, see what her view is. It may well be that Councillor Rose is going to bring it to committee. We don't know yet. She's still trying.
Yeah.
Dear. Okay. Is there a chance that she could join us by telephone, Ms Davis?
Yes, Chairman. The telephone dialing details are actually on the email with the joining details for the video. So they're just listed underneath. So if she wants to join in that way, then she can do that.
Okay. Councillor Shuttleworth, would you mind? Thank you. And what about Mr Watson? Is he able to join us? If not, can he also join us by telephone?
Yes, he can do. I'll just ask Hannah if Hannah, have you managed to contact Mr Watson?
I've sent another email. He said it's not accepting the passcode at the moment, but I've advised him that he might want to copy and paste it, anything like that. But I can let him know that he could join by phone as well. I'll send a quick email again.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, sorry, Ms Muscroft. Would you like to go now?
Just to clarify, to help out while Neville's trying to gain access into it, in terms of the application that Councillor Pringle made reference to, which is point 2 of the previous discussion, that would come to planning committee anyway because it's a major application. So as soon as it is ready, it will be coming before members for consideration. So I just thought I'd highlight that.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we'll go on to items declaration of interest. And so I'm going to take, first of all, has anyone any interests to declare in the two applications that we have today? The third application at Ravenflat Barn at Belbusk has been withdrawn, and you all should have had an email this morning to say that's happened. Councillor, oh, okay, right, people are shaking their heads. Right, okay, you haven't either, right. Let me read this out. I can get control of my cursor. Okay, are you okay if I read this out, Ms Davies? You don't have a copy of it, do you?
I don't, Chair, no. No, sorry.
In that case, I will read it out. It's from David Smurthwaite, who is the strategic manager. This was brought in under section 10 of the policy, which means that he brought it in and only he can remove it. I'm writing to inform the planning committee that I am withdrawing Ravenflat Barn from the committee today. I called this application into committee using paragraph 10 of the scheme of delegation to ensure that Belbusk Parish Council had the opportunity to comment on the planning application. Belbusk Parish Council did not receive notification of the consultation due to a coding error in the uniform system. This has now been corrected. Since calling in the application, we have been able to agree the 3rd of December as an appropriate date for Belbusk Parish Council to comment on the application. It is now appropriate for a decision or provisional sorry, it's made a mistake. It is not appropriate for a decision or provisional decision to be made without Belbusk Parish Council commenting first. I'm sorry for any confusion. The application will come to the next available planning committee. And if Mr. Watt was here, he could perhaps explain the answer any questions on that. Does anybody? So that leaves us with two applications. So the declarations of interest then, please, on the two applications, one in Ingleton and one in Skipton. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No.
I have indicated, Madam Chairman.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Welch. Yes. Would you like to give your declaration, please?
The declaration, are we discussing lobbying at the same time?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can do both.
And I shall explain why, Madam Chairman, and the reason for it. It's yet again, these applications have weeks and weeks and weeks to run. Yet on the day before, or on the day of the meeting, yet two councillors continue, and in my opinion, it is lobbying other members. If members want to ask a question of the officers, that's fine. But it always gives the impression, when everybody's copied in, that they're trying to get everybody else on board at the same time. Now, my concerns are the fact that, obviously, when we're in a proper face-to-face meeting, and members of the public, applicants, objectors, everybody else, they sit there and they are party to any late representation, late papers that come in, which is fine. But unfortunately, and I'm I'm wise enough to realise that members could ring fellow members up discussing application. That's fine, but the virtual world that we are living in now, I'd like to address this to Mr. Strickland on a point of order, please, is that if members wanted to forward all these emails onto applicants and objectors, what impression would that give on the decisions that the planning committee are going to make? I realise that obviously we couldn't do this before, but now everything's electronically. At the click of a button that takes a few seconds, whether these are supposed to be private or whatever, not, I don't know. But in the eyes of the public, how would that seem when the day before and on the day there are emails flying, which I consider to be lobbying? Could I have an answer, Mr. Strickland, please? Is this lawful and should it be going on? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Welsh. Before I ask Mr. Strickland to respond, are there any other declarations of interest or lobbying? No. Oh, Councillor Brown, you got your real hand up.
Yes, no declaration of interest, but lobbying front. I've received lobbying information on both the Ingleton and on the council's application.
Is that for or against, Councillor Brown?
I would say against on the first one, and
on Ingleton against, yeah.
And against on the second one.
Right, okay, thank you. So, Councillor Welsh, are you declaring any lobbying interest then? Please. You muted, Councillor Welsh.
Sorry, my fault. Against on the Ingleton one.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the Skipton one, whether it's for or against. But I would like it registered that I have been lobbied off fellow councillors on these applications. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Which on the whole bank one you've been lobbied by fellow members? Sorry?
Yes, and the Ingleton one as well.
Okay.
Councillor Liss?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I've received an awful lot of lobbying on the Ingleton one. Obviously, I was expected to as a ward member. I'd be interested in what Mr. Strickland has to say with regard to the correspondence emails I've received from fellow members on the other application as to whether I need to declare that as lobbying or not. If I do, can you take it that I will declare that, okay?
Yes, thank you. I think we might all have to do that. Again, can I just say that I have been quite proactive in asking members to contact officers if to try to resolve issues outside of the meeting in order so that we are only discussing relevant points in the meeting. Not to, the intent is not to stifle debate, and all members understand that, but it is just to try to focus us all on what we need to focus on. And I just want to say that in the olden days of face-to-face meetings, there is nothing to stop a member, any member, be them a member of the planning committee or a ward member, phoning or emailing an officer to ask information and clarification on things. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Strickland now for him to his legal opinion. I'm sorry, Mr. Strickland, I'm sorry, Councillor Pringle's got his hand up. Can we just take that and then we've got all the comments. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess it's me they're referring to. I have asked questions of the lawyer before the meeting to try and shorten the meeting, as you, Madam Chairman, have asked us to do. I would like all members to know the answer. I mean, one question which hasn't been answered, there is a document on this first application which purports that it is unviable to provide affordable housing. And
Okay, can I just, I'm sorry, can I stop you there? We'll take that in the debate. So I'm going to ask Mr. Strickland now to answer.
Thank you, Chair. Just to try and clarify, I think the key point on all of this, and it's the same as when we have meetings face to face, as for when we have virtual meetings, is that members must approach all these applications and all these matters with an open mind. There is correspondence which has taken place prior to the committee, which I think has been part of the rightful desire of the chair to try to bring some more structure and order to the meetings. The correspondence that I have had with members is copied into all members, so that all members are aware of the communications. I see those communications as primarily for clarification purposes, and certainly in respect of the answers that I try to provide answers that clarify the issues rather than anything else. So I wouldn't be inclined to consider the emails as such as lobbying, but what I would say to all members is I would say that members need to make sure that they consider each application on the merits and that they approach each application with an open mind. With regards to the correspondence, all members are copied into them, and as far as I'm concerned, they can form part of the public file and they form part of the record and part of the debate. I hope that's helpful, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, that is. And welcome, Mr. Watson, who's the planning manager. You're muted at the moment, Mr. Watson.
Sorry about that, Chairman. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
I've been trying putting that code in for the last half hour and I finally managed to connect. Sorry about that.
That's okay. The stage that we're at, we're just about to go into the schedule of plans, but just to go back on the public participation. There was a member of the public, Jenny Andrews, who gave a statement. I don't know if you have seen that statement. Have you had sight of that statement?
I have, yes. I mean, there's two elements to it. There's Townmoor Caravan Site and the Mandale Homes application. I will, I think, Chairman, prefer to provide a written response, but the issue with Townmoor is that it obviously went to appeal and we then dealt with an application to discharge the conditions, which we've done. But I provide a full response to Mrs. Andrews on that basis. And secondly, on the Mandale Home application, that's awaiting Section 106 agreement. It hasn't been completed, but again, I'll provide a written response to that as well.
And Mr. Strickland explained, oh no, sorry, Ms. Muscroft explained that application on Mandale Homes, because of the size of the application, that it will come to committee. You're muted.
Sorry, that will be the case, but we're waiting for the Section 106 agreement to be completed and then we'll deal with it in the appropriate manner.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask, please, that you copy the planning committee members in on your response to Jenny Andrews, please?
I will copy my response to all members and substitute members.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on now to the schedule of plans at last. Mr. Watson, I don't know if you're aware, but the third item on the schedule, the Ravenflat Barn at Belbus, has been withdrawn, and there was an email this morning from the strategic manager of planning and regeneration, and he and I've read his email out because not all members of the committee received that email. So I don't know if you want to add anything. Have you seen the email?
I have, yes. I know that the application has been withdrawn from the agenda. We'll carry out consultation. The consultation with the parish council runs till the 3rd of December, and then I'll bring it back to an appropriate meeting thereafter. As explained in the email from David, the whole issue was over coding, because as far as we were concerned, to the non-expert computer on the uniform system, the parish council had been notified, but there was a letter code beside it that had been, how it happened, I don't know. The support team manager has looked into it, but we have corrected the position, and the parish council will have the opportunity to make a representation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So moving on to the schedule of plans, Councillor Brown's got his virtual hand up already.
Sorry, just to say that I've got Councillor Sutcliffe trying to get in and he can't get through the code, so he's genuinely still trying to join. I'll try and get on the phone to him.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Thank you very much.
Can I just say,
oh, Councillor Rhodes, you're here.
I'm here. Half an hour of my life. Sorry.
Okay, well, I'm sure there's nothing else you would rather be doing. We a bit of a catch up then. Item 3 has been withdrawn from the schedule of plans. Okay, did you receive an email from David Smurthwaite, the strategic manager, this morning explaining the reason? Okay.
No, sorry, Chair, I didn't.
Okay, I have read it out before, but I can forward that to you so that you can look at that. Then the other thing is Jenny Andrews, a lady called Jenny Andrews, spoke in the public participation part of the agenda, and she did raise something about Mandale Homes, which is in your ward. That will be coming to committee once the section 106 has been received by the planning department.
Thank you very much.
Have you had sight of the of that comment from Jenny Andrews? If not, I can ask Ms Davies to send that to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have got a copy of what she was to read out at the meeting, and a copy of her email that certainly raised concerns from my point of view. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just mention that Councillor Sutcliffe's with us now as well? So I think that's everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know how, Vicky, but it worked when I tried it for about the 10th time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Councillor Sutcliffe. We'll go. So this is Councillor Sutcliffe, Councillor Rhodes. You're late joining us. Do either of you have any declarations of interest or lobbying on the 2 items on the agenda today? The 2 items are Ingleton and Skipton, and at Councillor Sutcliffe, as I know you're already aware, the Bell Busk application has been withdrawn. So do you have any lobbying or any declarations of interest, please, on either of the 2?
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you, Councillor. Sorry. No, I don't have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Neither do I, Linda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutcliffe. Right, could we all mute ourselves, please, whilst we go into the while we go into the officer's presentation. So can I ask, I don't know who's going to give the presentation. Mr. Watson,
no problem.
It's okay. Right, thank you, Ms. Musgrove.
Right. Chair, can you just confirm that you can see the full slides in front of you?
I can see it, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right, okay, members, this is the first item on the presentation today. The application has come before members because it's a joint application with the council for residential development on a site that's allocated within the local plan. Right, this is an aerial view of the actual site itself. So the area that we're looking at is through this area here. At the moment, the site itself is used for car parking and overnight HGV goods vehicles in the evening. You can just see here there is a multi-sports area to this. The site also leads out into the cricket ground area to the rear of the site. These trees that you can see that along this boundary are outside of the actual application site and are protected by a tree preservation order. You also then have along this area here some other trees through here, trees and shrubs again, and then fronting down you've got two grass bridges that lead out onto the main highway of Backgate along through here. The site itself as you come up is relatively flat except for this little access here which falls way down to the main road. You've got low level stone boundary walls along through this area here. You have a ball netting fencing on the inside of this area here due to the cricket pitch that's beyond. And then you also have fencing along here and access through to the multi-sports area through here as well. This is just a quick photograph to let you have a look actually into the site itself. As I mentioned previously, the site is an allocated site within the local plan for residential development. It does lie within the main built-up area of Ingleton and also within the conservation area of Ingleton as well. This is a proposed site layout. Hopefully you'll be able to see that quite clearly. So what we've got in terms of the proposal, it has picked up because it is in the residential area, which does have a wide variety of differing properties within that area. So we've got detached, terrace properties, etc., all of different materials and styles and things. So this has informed the actual layout itself. Now, the layout as well has also been informed by the principles set out within the local plan. So one of the key things is making sure that any development on this site sits in nicely within the conservation area. So looking at the internal layout, we've got the access coming in. So the access at the moment is more into the central. So this will be moving off to the side. So you've got it coming into the premises here, into a shared access court area. You've got parking along the side and to this area here. You've got two lots of semi-detaches here fronting out onto Backgate Road itself, and then another pair of semi-properties towards the rear here. Now, some members will notice that there is actually a buffer in this area here. Now, the reason for this green buffer here is due to obviously the cricket pitch to the rear, and was one of the requirements of Sport England was to have this area here to ensure that no balls, if they did come through, didn't actually cause any injury to anybody within the actual site itself. The benefit of having this area here and the improved soft landscaping is obviously not only does it help to soften any potential impact the development would have, but it also helps in terms of the biodiversity within the site itself. Now, access, you can hardly see it, unfortunately, but the access to the cricket ground will still be maintained. It will be restricted because it will have to be managed because of the requirements of Sport England, but access can be maintained through the management company who will be managing that particular area there. So as I say, we've got access coming through into a shared court area. You've got your two dwellings, two semi-detached dwellings here. You've got nice garden areas towards the rear for all of them. And then you've got some public amenity spaces to the front of all the properties along through here. Now, highways have been consulted in terms of the proposal and the parking and have not objected to the proposal. In terms of the density in the mix, the proposal is considered to meet the requirements of policy SP3 as it's providing 2 and 3 bed accommodation in there. The proposed layout also allows to ensure that there is sufficient privacy, not only for between the properties as you look from this property to here, etc., but also between properties that also exist within the surrounding area. So it's not considered that the proposal will have an adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring properties. Now, in terms of the designs as well, the next couple of slides will give you an idea in terms of the overall dwellings themselves. Now, turning to, just before I go into too detail in terms of that, the proposal, because it's located in a designated rural location, policy H2 does require that there is an off-site contribution put forward. Now, the proposal itself has been within planning for quite some time and has been subject to 2 viability assessments by independent assessors. Both of those have complied that it's not viable to provide an off-site contribution. And therefore, as stated in the set out of policy H2, that does mean that the policy requirement has been met in terms of this, and there will be no affordable contribution in terms of the proposal. And the next couple of slides, as outlined, this is just a couple of showing you from plots 1 to 4. These are the ones that will be fronting out onto back gate. So we've kept the design itself. We're going to be using high quality local materials. We've got the stone surrounds around the windows, and we've got the retention in terms of the windows and everything. So again, keeping and picking up some of the features that we see within the main street that these properties will be located on. These are the ones, again, so we're going to looking at plot 5 and 6. So again, relatively repetitive in terms of how they are. The Heritage Officer has reviewed it and has said that he doesn't consider that this proposal would have an adverse impact on the conservation area, nor on the setting of the listed building, which is to the southeast of the actual site itself. There are conditions on the proposal if it was to be granted permission, in terms of making sure that we have final decision in terms of any conditions that will be put forward in relation to this proposal. This is a section through the site. In terms of it, you can just, if you see through here, this is one of the existing properties that's actually already on back gate, and you can actually see that the proposed 2 properties that front down onto back gate would be actually lower than the ones that are existing on that side already. So again, in terms of the scale, it's considered that the proposed dwellings would sit quite nicely in terms of the setting of the street scene in terms of that. It is acknowledged due to the demography that these properties would be slightly in a more elevated position, but given the setback from the main road, again, it's not considered that these would have an adverse impact in terms of the visual impact that would arise from this particular development. This is just an artist impression in terms of the street scene that we've got here. So what we would have is low-level walls, which is again picking up some of the features of the surrounding area. You've got some metal railings going through and stone boundary walls, again picking up some of the features which are in the surrounding area. So remember, in terms of the proposal, it is not considered that the proposal will have an adverse impact on highways. The proposal does improve the biodiversity in terms of the site as it is at the moment. The soft landscaping will also help to mitigate. It has submitted ACES and the steps going to be taken to ensure that the development is in compliance with policy EV3 into timber construction, good airtight development, energy efficient fixtures and fittings, etc. in there. There is a condition to make sure that that actually does occur. As I mentioned previously, the application has been subject to 2 sensitivity assessments, which have deemed that it can't be an affordable contributions at this time. So therefore, based on the chair.
I'm sorry, for me, you were breaking up a little bit there. I don't know if it was the same for everyone else. Could you just say the last few sentences from about the affordable housing element of it, please, again?
Yes, I can, Chair. Yeah. What I was saying is that the application has been subject to 2 independent assessments, the provision of an off-site contribution in line with the requirements of H2, the policy of the local plan. Both have means that unfortunately the proposal is not able to provide an off-site contribution, and therefore, whilst it doesn't provide one, it is in accordance with H2 in terms of the local plan. So that was just to clarify that. I hope I've made that a bit clearer.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Ms. Muscroft. Mr. Watson, do you, let me just check, hang on. Are you able to raise your virtual hand, Mr. Watson? You should, rather than me keep coming back to you, because you're not on my list. Oh, yes, you are. Sorry. Oh, right. Yes, you're not co-host, so you, yeah, you're muted at the moment. Yeah, that's working. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so rather than keep coming back to you and delaying, if you want to raise your hand, is there anything you want to say at this moment in time, though, after all that? You're muted again.
That presentation was fine. There's nothing that I would wish to add to it. So it effectively it stands as the presentation with the recommendation before you. I will use my raised hand if I need to interject at any point in the debate.
Thank you. Okay, so now we go on to the speakers. We have one speaker from the Parish Council, Mr. David McGonigal. Is that correct, Ms. Davis?
It is, Chairman, and you've also got Chris Crichton, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant as well, which is not on your list, but he's in the meeting now. So,
thank you.
Okay.
Very much. Okay, so thank you. So, Mr. McGonigal, would you, you have 5 minutes in which you have to speak. Welcome to the meeting today. Would you like to unmute yourself, please, and introduce yourself before you give us your comments?
Thank you, Chair. I presume the volume is fine?
It is for me. I'm fine, thank you.
Yes, I'm a member of Ingleton Parish Council, an active member of the sports management that look after the field and the multi-use games area adjacent to the property. So if you're happy, I will start.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Right. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to share the views of Ingleton Parish Council on this application. The Parish Council are generally supportive of residential development in the parish of Ingleton as long as it improves the village. In this case, we don't believe this is the case because of the loss of car parking. This issue is also highlighted in many of the 80 objections to this planning application received from the public. Ingleton has been inundated with visitors since March 2020 lockdown. This and the community centre car park have often been full at weekends and holidays, along with a dangerous amount of roadside parking in the village and surrounding lanes. The Craven District Council property to say that there is replacement parking available at the community centre car park, which has often been full by 11 AM at weekends and school holidays, is not true. As you have seen on the photographs I sent to you last week, there were 50 cars on the Backgate car park. The community centre car park was full and many of the streets were already full. This increase in visitors is not new. It started about 3 years ago after the village, and more specifically the Waterfalls Walk, was showcased on the TV in Britain's 100 Best Walks. Therefore, it is reasonable to assume that this increase in numbers will be permanent, unless of course you remove the parking. Approving this application will result in 50 plus additional cars looking for places to park on the curbside and pavements. And as you can see in other photographs, there's already an issue here. Creates a dangerous environment for our elderly residents. Ingleton needs to keep as many of these new visitors as possible as businesses in the village rebuild from the results of the COVID pandemic over the next few years. Both this and the community centre car park are also full for village events, the gala, 40s weekend, etc., all of which attract visitors to Ingleton, Craven and the Dales. I also see Craven District Council Property Department confirming that there are enough official lorry parking spaces within nearby industrial estates. This conflicts with signage at Ingleton Industrial Estate, which has signs stating that there is no overnight parking permitted. On working nights, there are usually between 1 and 5 lorries on this car park. There is no other practical place in the parish for these lorries. Whilst it's not a planning issue, has Craven District Council taken into account the loss of ongoing car parking revenue? I also don't see the issue raised in the public comments about accessing and ingressing the ambulance station at the other side of Back Gate being resolved in this application. To access the ambulance station, they often have to use the car park and then drive across Back Gate. I've read and tried to read and understand the viability report. It's not easy, but I understand that the developer doesn't in this case need to provide an affordable housing contribution. I also understand that previously Craven District Council have donated land to ensure viability of low-cost housing. So I worry that Craven District Council, by selling the land to their developer at only a market price, are ensuring that the developer doesn't have to provide the affordable housing contribution. This sounds very worrying. The development is in the conservation area. The last reasonably sized development in the conservation area is Bankhall Close, just across the sports field. The 6 properties on there, 4 are holiday lets, second homes. This does nothing to resolve the housing stock issues in Ingleton or rural Craven. The greater percentage of holiday lets and second homes in Ingleton are in the conservation area. There are other pieces of Craven District land in Ingleton that would be much better sites to develop and increase housing stock in Ingleton for residents, current and future. If you decide to approve this planning application, there are 3 things we would like you to consider and document. Firstly, that the responsibility for the maintenance of the boundaries between the development and the sports field and the new acoustic fence are defined. Currently, Craven District Council maintain the fence between the car park and the sports field. We would hope that that would continue. Secondly, regarding the buffer zone, this is only needed when cricket is being played on the sports field between May and September. There is no need for it to be locked at any other time, and by it being open at those other times, pedestrian access from the development properties to the village centre, sports field and bus stops would continue to be available. Thirdly, there will be 12 parking spaces adjacent to the multi-use games area, and whilst recognising that Sport England have approved the measures taken by the developer, we still have a worry about stray footballs hitting vehicles parked there and would like some mitigation in place. Again, can I thank you for your time and hope I have made the case for declining this planning application for the benefit of the residents and visitors to Ingleton.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGonigal. We don't have anyone from the objectors. Is that correct, Ms. Davis? Unless we've had a late application? No objectors?
No objectors, Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. So we now go on to the applicant's agent, Mr. Chris Crichton. Welcome, Mr. Crichton. You have 5 minutes to speak. If you'd just like to unmute yourself and before you give your presentation, just introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public. I'm Chris Crichton of Peacock and Smith, the agent for this application. As you've probably heard, the local plan has identified and allocated this site for housing development, as the car park has been very lightly used. Usage has been falling year on year. I accept there was a temporary blip this summer, when the coronavirus restrictions were lifted and we had a spell of hot weather, which brought unprecedented numbers of visitors to not only Ingleton, but all across the Dales. It's expected usage will continue to fall in the future. And of course, the council will have ongoing liabilities in maintaining the car park. So redeveloping the site for housing is what the local plan has envisioned for this site. It'll be a more efficient use of the land. It will provide additional housing choice in Ingleton at a location with good access to local services. And of course, it will help to reduce the pressure to develop on greenfield sites outside the development boundary. On the scheme itself, we've worked closely with your officers and consultees to design a scheme that fits into the street scene. And you may have seen on a photo montage circulated earlier what it would actually look like when viewed from Backgate. The new homes will be built in stone and render, with stone surrounds around the doors and the windows, with slate roofs, all in keeping with the local conservation area. There'll be 4 3-bed properties and 4 2-bed properties. Each property will have its own private garden space, own parking space, and parking space for visitors. Within the site, we've been able to set aside a 12-metre wide strip of land on the northern edge. This will be planted with trees and maintained by the council as a buffer zone between the cricket field and the new homes. This has satisfied Sport England and the English Cricket Board as being an appropriate solution. Access to that buffer zone for maintenance, retrieval of balls, the fell race, the gala and other events will be via a gate with keys to be held by the cricket club, the community centre and the district council. In addition, the proposal includes acoustic fencing around the multi-use games area, which will protect the immunity of both existing residents and of course the new residents on the site. I therefore commend your officer's report to you, which recommends the proposal for approval. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next, normally we would go to the ward councillors. The ward councillors are Councillor Liss and Councillor Ireton. Councillor Liss is with us today. Councillor Liss, do you want to speak as ward member?
I would speak as a member of the committee, if you don't mind, Chairman.
That's absolutely fine. I will ask you, I will give you the opportunity to speak first then, because it's your ward. Mr. I don't know if the case officer or Mr. Watson wants to comment on anything that's been said up to now.
Chairman, I think it's in the committee report, but obviously the site is identified in the local plan under policy SP9, and obviously that went through the examination last year before adoption of the local plan in November last year. There's nothing further that I wish to add on to that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Muscroft, do you want to add anything?
No, I think it's covered in the report. There's nothing else to add. Thank you.
Okay, can I just clarify though that although it is in the local plan, part of the site which is actually the entrance, the existing entrance, is not in the local plan, is it? So there are 2 houses of this development that are not actually in the local plan, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. The majority has been identified for redevelopment. It's just that front bit, you are totally correct, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Liss, you are the ward member. Would you like to go first? You're muted, Councillor Liss, you're muted.
Could you not read my lips, Chairman?
Oh, no.
The Ingleton Parish Council representative, Mr. McGonigal, has already spoken very ably of the main issues regarding this application. However, just to add to some of the points he's raised, visitor numbers have shown a steady increase, mainly to the waterfalls over the last 3 years, with a large increase from the West Yorkshire in particular. Statistically, that's shown to be true. There's also been increases since the new Three Peaks route was established, starting from Ingleton. It's a bit odd that quite a few of those people that do use that new route they do park in this car park. That does tend to happen locally. This increase, of course, has accelerated since March. In fact, in revenue terms, it's ironic, isn't it? The Ingleton car parks are currently the only ones in Craven that are ahead of budget for the year to date. However, as has been said, the village has been inundated with visitors, a fact that has been helped in terms of car parking by the use of a temporary field provision, which, as members will be aware, can only be used for 28 days, which has increased that provision, albeit temporarily, by around 200 cars. This situation would have been even worse than the circulated pictures from Mr. McGonigal that you've all seen, and will in fact be that case once these 28 days have been completed. If the agent reports that this car park hasn't been used very much over in previous years, yeah, it's probably fair to say, but I will say that the times are changing in Ingleton, and an awful lot more visitors are now using the village, and the last thing we wanted to do is try and impinge on that improvement at all. As Mr. McGonigal quite rightly says, the people of Ingleton aren't against any new houses being built, and that support has been evident in recent years when a large number have in fact been built, an extremely large number. Nor are they against the majority of sites included in the local plan, amounting to an excess of 100, providing 100 houses. That support will continue, but it needs to be on sites that don't reduce service provision, which this site does. And as an aside, this application actually, as you say, Chairman, encroaches on land outside that's shown in the local plan. Not only that, it is recognised that local people are aware that affordable homes for rental or first-time purchases are still necessary. In the past, the council had provided sites at discounted rates to facilitate this, and much valued they are. This application has not followed that course. There are none provided by this application. Since becoming a member of this council over 32 years ago, I've always believed that its main objectives have been to provide services and foster a strong local economic stability. I still do. What's more, I think our performance has been good. It is rather ironic that we had support on the provision of a bike track and improvements to our swimming pool, which have increased visitors. And we are supported by the same team on a future project for a riverside walk and upgraded children's play facilities, which should have the same effect. I repeat, increase our visitors and subsequently increase the economic viability of this village. However, this application achieves none of those objectives. Therefore, along with my fellow ward member, the parish council and a large amount of residents, over 80 of whom have submitted their views on this application, object to the proposals. I realise that a number of things I've referred to are not significant planning matters. However, the loss of parking provision is, and is also hugely significant to the local community and its economy, I repeat. I therefore would like to move, Chairman, that we in fact refuse this application. Thank you.
Robert has skipped and seconds that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Liz. So we have a proposal for refusal and a seconder for refusal. Councillor Liz and Heseltine. Okay, thank you for that, gentlemen.
Could I speak to the application, please?
Yes, I'm going to let Councillor Heseltine speak next because he doesn't have a virtual hand. So, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Not to repeat anything unnecessary, but Ingleton is already crucially and critically short of parking facilities. It's noticeable that Parish Council has such strong objections, and 89 objectors in Ingleton is a substantial amount of the population. So loss of parking is a sustainable reason for refusal. That there is no provision at all for affordable homes on or off site is quite unbelievable. It is said in the report by various professional people that that is the case, but the site itself, Madam Chairman, is a virtually level site. It has an existing access, macadam, substantially enough for heavy vehicles. It just crossed my mind, the question should be, where does the extra cost of development on this site come from? The bottom line for me on this is, do we accept the strongly held, knowledgeable views of the parish council and local representative, or the developers' opinions? And I certainly come out against this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Heseltine. Okay, so we have, I'm sorry, Councillor Pringle, you had your hand up, now it's down. Councillor Morell. Councillor Morell.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A couple of points I'd like to raise. Firstly, we've heard that there's been an assessment regarding affordable homes, and what I'd like to point out is policy H2 actually states, and I'm quoting from page 180, in designated rural areas, authorities may choose to implement a lower threshold of 5 dwellings or less to kick in with the affordable housing requirements. Continuing to read on page 181, affordable housing and tariff style contributions should be sought from developments of between 6 and 10 units in the form of cash payments, which are commuted until after completion of units within the development. So therefore H2 is actually stating that we should be requiring affordable housing contributions or commuted sums. Therefore, I do not understand why we as a parish council are choosing not to do so, because that is blatantly against our own local plan. That's point number one. Point number two is that there has been in the past an application in my own ward which was turned down and went to appeal, and the appeals inspector stated that in her reasoning there were a considerable number of objections. There were 80 people objected, more than that objecting here. So I do think that that is something that needs to be taken into consideration. So we've had, you know, in my experience, an inspector turning down an appeal because of a significant number of objections. And that was actually written in her report. So I do think we need to take into consideration the strength of feeling that there is against this application. So I'm of the opinion that you know, we need to look at this very seriously, and should we actually be accepting this application? I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morell. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just adding on to what's already been said, as somebody who's had a heavy goods licence for over 40 years, and not many places I haven't been to, I think one of the, and it's getting harder and harder, is overnight parking for heavy goods vehicles. Not everybody can be at their operating centre at night. For those who do the long distance driving, various tramping or trunking, or I'll explain that if anybody doesn't understand it. It's that many times you can be out 4 or 5 nights a week trying to find somewhere to park. This is a perfect example. I used to go to Ingleton 3 times a week at one time, usually early doors, and yes, obviously to be plenty of heavy goods vehicles parked there. For the convenience and the fact that there's, I don't know how long the toilet facilities, car park next door are open, but it's certainly a good service. There's also the The Overview and Scrutiny Committee I sit on at County Hall is in the process of forming a working group. And one of the activities of that working group is sorting out or trying to off-road parking for heavy goods vehicles, because it's getting harder and harder. A lot of industrial estates will ban overnight parking. I think Ingleton does. And as somebody who's spent more hours driving around industrial estates and industrial land trying to find somewhere to park for the night, I can have full sympathy. So that would be a classic example for this working group, is to take that on as to how are they going to replace them somewhere else. I don't think councillors will need to tell me about the chaos and the photographs that I've seen when the waterfalls were shut this year. Thornton in Lonsdale Road was absolutely impassable, road blocked, ambulance couldn't get through. It was absolutely horrendous. And you could say to yourself, well, that's only because of the current coronavirus and people not holidaying abroad. Maybe so, but it is not going to go away. And for the next few years, at least, I would say there's going to be a lot of restrictions, and there's going to be more pressure on car parks, especially in tourism areas. I can't add any more to what the two previous speakers have said. That's the worst thing about when you come in third or fourth speaker. The points you were all going to make have been said. But I just thought I'd add my own one or two. I will be voting in support of refusing this. I think it is just a leap too far. Yes, we have to utilise our assets, shall we say, but that could be properly utilised without flogging it off for houses, because when the land is gone, it is gone. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Welsh. Next speaker, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's not often we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, but it seems like we might be. I have a couple of concerns. We've heard there are 2 viability assessments being done. I was studying one of them with one of the ward councillors over the weekend, and it's been removed from Craven District Council's website. Should we actually be looking at this application under the circumstances? Because I think the general public, the 90 objectors, have a right to look at these viability assessments, and the viability assessment in itself was very interesting, because the firm who did it actually said words to the effect of, we're not sure we agree with these figures, but we haven't checked them. We suggest that somebody else does. Now, nobody's checked those figures, and on the basis of that, we are recommended to approve this with no affordable housing. So when I finish, can the lawyer tell me, please, should we have the 2 viability assessments hidden from public view? Because I'm sure the person that owns Hallbank and is going to contribute several million in terms of affordable housing would like to be able to pay a consultant to suggest some figures that say affordable housing isn't viable. I think that no affordable housing is a material consideration, and I'd like our solicitor to say whether or not we can use that as one of our reasons. There are other reasons to turn this down, I think. We have monitoring of our local planning progress, and I would have loved to have seen in the officer's report the figures which were produced on the 1st of October, less than 2 months ago, in respect of Ingleton. And those figures show an oversupply in the plan period of 33 houses, provided all lands that are allocated were granted permission. So there's no pressure on housing in this village, but our officer's report doesn't even tell us that, and it's supposed to be impartial. We have monitoring figures which should come forward with every application, please. There are other reasons to turn it down, but basically, Mr. McGonigal has got it exactly spot on. It's about parking unless we can add in affordable housing. And I'd like the solicitor's comments on both whether we should be looking at it when the documents are hidden and whether we can use that as a material consideration to add into the planning balance. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pringle. I think there might be two things here. Yes, I'm not sure if Mr. Watson wants to answer as well as Ms. Muscroft regarding the viability assessment. Do you want to take that before we go to Mr. Strickland? Whoever wants to answer.
If I can, Chair, through you, if that is okay.
Yeah, Mr. Watson, you happy that Ms. Muscroft answers that? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No problem. There was a couple of points raised there in terms of that. Councillor Morell quite rightly says it is a designated site. We would be seeking to look for affordable contributions, but the policy also states that where it cannot be put forward in terms of affordable, as long as there is a viability case put forward and we get that independently assessed, then that meets that policy in terms of that. So, because what it is, it's the developer has demonstrated that there can be no affordable contribution at this time, and members will know that that happens on a regular basis for lots of sites. So unfortunately, in this instance, we haven't been able to demonstrate that this site can provide an affordable contribution. In terms of the document itself, in terms of the viability assessment, these documents actually aren't made for public view due to the commercial sensitive information that is contained within them. What we tend to do is we keep them, they're on the register, but they're not made public in terms of that because of the sensibility. So unfortunately, it was made public by mistake. You know, members are quite welcome to contact a case officer in these sorts of instances, and we will help to provide you with the relevant information. What I would say is that the site has been very stringently reviewed in terms of having not just one, but two viability assessments done on it. And both of the assessments have looked at all the issues relating to that site. And I know a couple of instances there's mention of figures and things like that. But the summary in terms of the assessment in the last report, point 9.7, and I will read it out because it's easier to do because I'm not a viability expert. We have recalculated our appraisal to assess the relevant commuted sum that would result in an RLV equal to the applicant's BLV. What it's saying is we cannot concur that a commuted sum is viable. So what we've got is two independent inspectors really who've looked at it and said, unfortunately, the proposal is not viable in terms of affordable contribution. What they have said, because it is a joint application, is that this can be monitored during any development stage when the council's still involved in it. So they have said that that is something that we could look at in terms of that. So I think I just wanted to clarify, and one other final point in terms of it. The majority of the site is in the local plan and has been identified for residential accommodation. Therefore, that site will be developed for residential accommodation, and it kind of sits outside the settlement growth information that was being circulated because it is identified for housing. So that's why in the officer's report, I haven't referred to the settlement growth because it's already been identified that this site will provide so many houses. So it was just really for that clarification, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Is anybody else? Sorry, there's no one else asking to speak. What we don't have yet, what I'd like Councillor Liss and Councillor Heseltine to consider is your reason for refusal. In the meantime, I'll go to Councillor Pringle to give you a bit of time to think. Councillor Pringle?
Yeah, thank you for that. We're waiting to hear from Alex, but just to come back on that, I'm reading from Craven District Council's website on financial viability appraisals, and it says in some cases a financial viability report will be required as part of determining the planning application. And the fallback position is any submitted financial viability appraisal will be published on the Creighton District Council Planning Register along with all of the documentation submitted as part of the planning application. That couldn't be clearer. It's the fallback position, and I actually think as a council, if we are not going to contribute and expect other developers to contribute, we ought to be having it on the website, particularly when it says some of the things that it does, like we haven't checked the figures. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to Mr. Strickland. Councillor Morell, you've indicated, I know, but I just want to clarify before I come to you, Mr. Strickland, with Mr. Watson, who's head of planning, this difference between understanding of this the viability assessment, whether or not it should be made public.
The issue is that policy 2 of the local plan actually says that affordable housing will be provided or commuted sums are provided at site if, unless a viability assessment reaches the conclusion that it can't deliver. And that's the situation we're at the moment. We don't go out to viability assessors and instruct them to reach a conclusion. It's done entirely independently, and if they come back, there's many occasions when the housing team would say, well, we think that it should be provided. Developers come forward usually with their position that they produce the independent verification on the content of it. We don't just accept it cold. It's there as a legitimate position to be taking in respect of policy H2, because policy H2 requires the delivery of affordable housing subject to viability, and that's the case on every single situation. Now, if a developer comes back and says, you are expecting 30% or you are expecting commuted sums, that's when the developer comes forward and provides independent advice, because there's no merit in and there's certainly no instructions to reach any particular conclusion. So I would be very wary, having had that evidence and advice in front of us, that we're in a situation where we've been advised that it's just not viable. If we got a separate report and a developer was saying that they were going to provide less than the requirement, that again would be subject to viability and would be policy compliant, because there are scenarios where you might not deliver 30% or you might not deliver commuted sums, but there is a figure that is dealt with at less than the policy requirement position as the starting point. And that's really the point that I would want to make, is that the instructions are not there to reach a conclusion. We are now informed by the advice that we've received. And that's why we're advising, and that's why I will be advising, that to say that the non-delivery of affordable housing and as a commuted sum as a reason for refusal, I'm sorry, Chairman, that one is going to be very difficult to substantiate and very difficult to justify. That's all I want to say at this stage, Chair, and I'll come back with anything else if you wish clarification.
Thank you for that. I did ask about this, about whether or not the viability assessment, the statement that's on the Creighton District Council website, Councillor Pringle referred to, that viability assessments will be published on the website. That's something that perhaps, if you like, if we can take outside of the planning committee and have a look at that and perhaps feed that back to members outside committee.
More than happy to do that, Chair.
In the meantime, okay, thank you. In the meantime, Councillor Morell. you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you. I've heard everything that's been said so far, understood it completely. Nonetheless, it is in our local plan, in black and white, in plain English, that we should be expecting a contribution. Now, taking that outside of the local plan and asking someone to give us advice, surely we should have that advice available to us when we make a decision. Because to me, it's just nonsensical to have a local plan here. You know, I'm looking at page 180 to page 183 of our local plan to try and make sense of what I'm being told, and it just doesn't add up. Not without that report to go alongside what we have here in black and white in our local plan. We need these reports. We need them in our hands to read them, to see what they say, to understand and appreciate what they say. Otherwise, how can we possibly make an advised and informed decision? I'm sorry, but I just cannot decide in favour of this application without that information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morell, and perhaps that's something else that we could take up outside of the meeting, because it has been proposed for refusal. So I'll just add that to my list as well. So, Mr. Strickland, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't come back to you. I do apologise.
No problem, Chair. Thank you. Just to try and assist the committee, and again, just following on from the comments of the planning manager and the planning officer, I think the key point I think for members to remember about this is that this is not an unusual situation. This is a standard situation with any developer that are bound by the affordable housing policy in the local plan, that there is a presumption that they will be required to meet it. And if there is a viability issue, they submit an assessment which indicates why that will not be the case. That viability assessment is then looked at professionally by the officers, and it is scrutinised, and a judgment is come to on that basis. As was indicated in the presentation, that is exactly what has happened here. Officers have looked at the viability assessment, 2 viability assessments that have come in. Both of those viability assessments have reached the same conclusion, that it is not sustainable to provide an affordable housing contribution on this site. That position has been documented in the report, which is set out in paragraph 6.5 to 6.10 on the consultation response. So there is really nothing different about this application at all. It has been dealt with exactly the same as any other application. And on the viability issue, the independent advice that has been submitted to the council as local planning authority indicates that the development would not be viable for an affordable housing contribution. And I seem to recall that the planning officer indicated that that meant that it was policy compliant in terms of policy H2, and therefore, as the planning manager has indicated, lack of affordable housing would not be a viable reason to include in a reason for refusal. I hope that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so Councillor Welch, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Irrespective of viability assessment or not, I think anybody, I find it quite amazing actually, but anybody who knows where the site is, it is a car park with feet of stone there, tarmac, established where there's 40-ton vehicles travelling over it all the time. It is not a bog. It is raised up. There would be no issue with the drains. Just to satisfy some people, the fact that it's raised up, because it's been a car park, everything's established, the drains are established, everything else will be there. To say it's not viable, I think quite honestly, is laughable. Sometime or other in my life, I've worked in the building trade at times. A more level, flat site you couldn't come across. if there's somebody says it isn't viable, well, I'm afraid they want to do the sums. I would question a lot of the clearance and all the other figures that have gone into it. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's flat, it's perfect. If you're building on a bog where it's going to take thousands and thousands of tons of hardcore or whatever, fair enough. And I've known that happen with one, I can just about see from where I'm sat looking out my office window. But this is just the opposite. It is an ideal opportunity if that was the case. And I personally think that we have a case for saying that the viability assessment is wrong. I don't care who's given it. It isn't rocket science to look at it and say it is wrong. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for that opinion, Councillor Welch. Councillor List, you had your hand up first, but Councillor Brown also has his hand up. Do you want?
Yeah, Chairman, I'm quite happy for. I was wanting to sort of sum up and give my reasons after the debate. But if Councillor Brown, who hasn't spoken yet, wishes to add to the debate, that's okay by me. Fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what people said, Councillor Welch and Councillor Pringle particularly. I was deeply uncomfortable with the whole affordability issue, particularly as we originally owned the land. But what I've not yet heard is an overcoming of the difficulty we're in. As I understand it, inside the national planning framework, we're required to have a presumption in favour of development. As I understand it, if we've got a local plan, that local plan needs to be followed unless we can identify our reasons. And I was intending when I came to this to abstain because I wasn't convinced that the council couldn't come forward with a scheme of its own to develop it entirely as affordable, and I didn't understand why we were selling off the land and then finding difficulties over a development. There is the issue of housing versus car park, which is the better, and I do understand the local issues, but I'm going to abstain unless I actually hear somebody give me a reason that will stand up in planning law, because I don't like it, but I'm not sure I've got grounds to say no.
Thank you for that. Councillor Liss.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, all this talk of viability, I've more or less accepted that the site isn't viable. It isn't, and what that means to me is that the site isn't viable for what the village needs. And the village needs affordable housing in any development and every development that it has, particularly in developments that are using council-owned land, particularly in those developments. And indeed, historically, that's always been the case. Whatever the arguments on viability, my honest opinion is that this site, if it's not viable to provide a housing need that the village wants, the car park issue is far more important than having a scheme that is not acceptable in terms of what the village needs. So my objection to this is purely based on the fact that the loss of this car park will have an economic effect on the village of Ingleton, and that will increase as time goes by. Councillor Welch was quite right. The issue of visitors isn't going to end next week. There's going to be a couple of years when Ingleton is going to remain as a heavy tourist attraction as far as visitors are concerned. That will remain, and hopefully a percentage of those people that visit Ingleton will enjoy themselves so much, and I've seen evidence of people enjoying themselves an awful lot on what we have in Ingleton, that they will still come back to Ingleton, regardless of COVID and the effects of COVID. We've advertised this. Mr. McGonigal referred to a fact that it was on a BBC programme. Our numbers went up remarkably after that. So please, let's, as far as I'm concerned, my objection is simply on the fact that we are losing an asset to the village, which will have a direct effect on the economic viability of our village. And that's my reason for raising the objections that I have to this. I hope I make myself clear, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So I've just written down some words there. So your reason for refusal is loss of car park will have an economic effect on Ingleton. Do you mean it will have an adverse economical effect?
I thought that's what I'd said, Chairman. It will have an
Sorry,
economic effect on the village of Ingleton, a village that this council has supported highly successfully. And that's one of the contributory factors to us getting more visitors. So on one hand, we're saying, yes, this is what Ingleton needs to do, and we'll support you. And on the other hand, you're taking away car parking, which is necessary to fulfill that need. So I'm sorry, in my simple mind, the argument about viability disappears if we can't provide in Ingleton what is needed for the village. But what we do need, I repeat myself, is car parking.
Okay, thank you. So that's the local view. Councillor Brown.
If we're going down that line, can we add the line of circumstances have changed since the local plan? Because I think it would be easier to sustain if we can argue that circumstances are different, both in terms of that and in terms of the housing delivery so far.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'd be quite willing to accept that. Yes, quite willing. And hopefully my second day, Mr. Heseltine.
Yes, rather than change, circumstances have evolved.
Since the adoption of the local plan?
Yep.
Right, okay. I'm going to ask Ms Davies to read out the reason for refusal. There's no other hand. I'm going to ask Ms Davies to read that out, please, the reason for refusal, just so that we're all clear before we go to the vote. And I'm also going to ask to Watson if he wants to add anything or clarify anything just before we go to the vote. Ms Davies, do you want to read out, please, the reason for refusal that we are going to be voting?
Thank you, Chair. It's been recommended for refusal against officer recommendation in the report, and that is that the circumstances evolved since the adoption of the local plan, and losing an asset such as car parking will have an adverse effect on the Ingleton community. I don't know whether there's anything else you want to add into that, because there were some other comments you made about there being 89 objectors and the parish council strongly objected. I don't know whether you wanted to include those. They were your initial comments.
Can I just say, I thought I mentioned the economic viability of the village.
Yes, yeah, the adverse economic effects on Ingleton, yes.
Could the wording include reflecting the strongly held views of the parish council and the 89 objectors?
Are you happy with that, Councillor Liss, as proposer?
Yes, that's fine. That is an actual fact. So yes, I'm more than happy with that.
Councillor, sorry, Mr. Watson is
indicating.
Is indicating that maybe that is not a reason that we can include in the refusal.
Chairman, there's two comments that I would like to make on that. I would like the opportunity to review what was said at the local plan examination, and obviously I haven't had evidence and information to hand, because if these issues had been raised at the time that the local plan examination is, I'd be very, very uncomfortable about using that now as a reason for refusal. And certainly it's not the issue of the level of opposition to an application that warrants a decision being made, because you can have one strong objection from one individual, and that would be potentially defensible at appeal. The fact that you've got 89 people in the parish council now opposed to the application, when I'm sure they had the opportunity to make representation during the local plan process, you can't use the level of feeling as a reason for refusing an application. So if members do go down that route, I would like the opportunity of reviewing the local plan position before any decision is issued if you do go down that route, and I will bring another report back to committee.
I think, Chairman, the point we're trying to get across is how much things have changed since the local plan consideration. Changed since the local plan consideration.
Could I just
say that? Yeah, you have said that in your reason for refusal. Sorry, Councillor Heseltine. I was just wanted to highlight.
Sorry, Madam Chair, but it's this change of circumstance that's going to affect the implementation of many policies in planning. The economy, the national economy, and certainly our local economy, has been devastated this last 9 months, and it's going to take a substantial number of years or decades to get through that. And that is some very greatly changed circumstances on the economy, and that has to be got across.
Yeah. Okay.
We're in a hole and we don't want to dig any deeper into it when it comes to national economics.
Yeah, yeah. Some good points.
Chair, can I just comment on something just following the observations from the planning manager? It may well be in light of those comments then that when we go to the vote on this, we look to take a vote that says minded to refuse on that basis, subject to a further report coming back to committee from the planning officer. That might be the way forward if the planning manager is in agreement with that.
Madam Chairman, we're only talking about wording of refusal and the conditions for refusal.
Madam Chairman, sorry, no, I can't say I agree with that.
Right.
I've already said that what we talked about is there's the changes that have occurred. I don't hold with the view that we're minded to approve to.
No, we're refusing it.
We're refusing it.
Okay. Okay, right.
Chair, just to clarify on that, I think the reason for my comments was because I think that the planning manager indicated that it would be difficult for us to refuse something if we hadn't gone back and checked what was said at the local plan debate. I think that was my cause of unease. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I understand
I'm
that.
sorry,
Thank
Chairman,
you.
but my contrary view to that is that whatever was said at the time the local plan was debated and talked about, things have changed quite dramatically.
Yeah. And that, yes, that is the point that you're wanting to stress, isn't it? So regardless of what the local plan says, what you're saying is that the situation has changed. So, okay, I think that's quite clear to everybody. I hope it is. Councillor Welsh and then Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was just wondering, helpful with the proposer, that one, it could also be added in for the reason that the undesirable effect that removing a well-used wagon park with due to lack of suitable alternative heavy goods vehicle parking, the effect it will have on the rural roads in the area. I might not be putting it across very well, but I think you can see where I'm coming from. That it,
yeah, displacing vehicles out onto the highway.
Yes, yeah.
Councillor List, your proposer, do you want to add that to your reason?
Are you okay with that?
Yes, definitely. having had heavy goods vehicles for the biggest part of my life, licence. It's always difficult finding somewhere to park.
And right, okay. Yeah, I can see you, Councillor Brown, but you're after Councillor Pringle. Just hang on a moment. Miss Davis, did you get that? Yeah, okay, right. Well,
Sorry,
we'll carry
Chair.
on.
Yes, about the undesirable effect of removing a well-used HGV parking
Onto the highway.
Yeah, and the lack of suitable alternative parking, displacing vehicles onto the highway.
Okay, well, we'll obviously this is developing this reason for refusal as we get more and more comments. Probably the longest reason for refusal ever. Councillor Pringle, you're next. Oh,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have sympathy with Councillor Morell, because I agree with everything he said, and it's a bit sad that it's all going to get forgotten. But that said, let's focus on the parking. I'd like to try and help the proposer and the seconder. Surely what we're trying to say is it's contrary to policy INF4 in the local plan, which it's contrary to lots of it, but it's specifically contrary to section D, which says in drawing up and determining proposals for new development, relevant consideration will be given to any likely impacts on public off-street parking and parking on the public highway. Now, it couldn't be clearer that that's what's happening. So that's one of the technical reasons. If the proposer wants to accept that, it's in INF4 and it's quite specific. It says you have to look at what you're doing. If we'd provided a different car park, we wouldn't have this argument. But we haven't provided a different car park. And if we haven't provided a different car park, we've got 8 houses and 12 parking spaces, which arguably isn't enough anyway, but we've also lost a whole car park. I don't know whether the proposer wants to add that to his technical reasons. Thank you.
okay, well, we'll
Thank you,
before we.
Councillor Pringle. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Okay, Vicky, are you getting this? Right, so let's just ask Mr. Watson. Before I ask Mr. Brown, Councillor Brown, I'm just going to ask Mr. Watson.
Chairman, I'm rather uncomfortable about that because that must have been taken into account in the allocation in the local plan. You can't suddenly now revisit the debate about the loss of the parking, which must have formed part of the local plan process. I can say that with some degree of certainty.
But it is policy.
Sorry?
It is national policy.
Sorry, what's
What,
that?
do you mean INF4 is not
It's policy, yes.
Okay, Mr. Watson, did you want to come back on that? You're muted at the moment.
Chairman, you can't cherry pick and you've got to take the local plan as a whole. And this site is an allocated site. You can't then use other policies in the local plan to say that that is the reason why you should be refusing something that's been allocated.
I mean, is that the case? Just hang on a minute, Councillor Esseltine. I'm trying to help you here. Is that the case? Because what the proposer and seconder are stressing is that there have been changes since the local plan. Are we, if we're in a situation where there have been significant changes, and I'm hoping that that those can be justified, and that there is information to back up that there have been significant changes, then the local plan is evolving. It's an evolving plan. Are we saying then that we can't challenge with changes? We can't challenge the plan. Sorry, yeah.
Chairman,
Go on, Mr. Watson.
If I could just come back on that one. What I'm advising you is that I think it would be unsound and unsafe to include the loss of HGV parking, because the loss of HGV parking must have been part of the consideration of this allocation. It's not a case of, well, we're taking it from here, but we want to put it somewhere else. I can say that with certainty without seeing the rest of the submission on the. If you reach a view that you believe that there is changing circumstances, I must advise you at this stage is that unless you can fully justify that position, you could be entirely undermining the local plan, because you could say that about any other allocation across the entire district, and I'd be very, very cautious about that.
Okay. So. Sorry, Councillor Heseltine, I jumped in there before you had chance to come back. Do you want to come back now?
No, I don't know about other members, but I've heard enough that we could move to the vote, please.
Okay, right. Well, and we just have Councillor Sutcliffe, who hasn't spoken before, and Councillor Liss, who's the proposer. So I'm going to go to Councillor Sutcliffe. Some of your wise words.
I've got my hand raised for some time, Councillor Brookman.
Yeah, but you have spoken before, and Councillor Sutcliffe hasn't spoken before. So I'm going to go to Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you for affording me that privilege, Chairman. I've sat here and I've listened to the arguments, and I think what we are forgetting is that we spent a long period of time and an obscene amount of money in producing a local plan. And now we're quoting alternative policies against what must have originally been approved in the formation of the local plan. I haven't yet heard a reason for appeal which would stand on appeal, in my opinion, and I will therefore be voting in favour of the application unless somebody can come up with a more substantial reason for appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutcliffe. So, Councillor Liss, I'm going to go to you, and then I'd like to go to the vote, unless Councillor Brown and Councillor Welch really have. Oh, it's Chris Croft, you've got your hand up. Right, just hang on a minute. I'll just explain. Councillor Brown, Councillor Welch, we have had a good long debate on this, and if you could just, to Councillor Liss and Miss Muscroft, you can keep it short, and that's fine. Otherwise, we'll go to the vote when you've finished. Councillor Liss.
Chairman, my and Councillor Heseltine's original proposals I felt were quite straightforward. We amended them slightly to take it, well, amended them quite a bit to take into account what members. I mean, I appreciate members' input into this. You know, we're trying awfully hard, you know, to reflect the true circumstances. My view is that basically we are, as I've said earlier, we are losing a village asset if we do this. Very, very simple. And the answer to the question, why wasn't this the case when the local plan came into force, was because the situation was different then to what it is now. And you quite rightly said, Chairman, things will change. Things will change before we develop another site in Ingleton. I would hope they don't change as significantly as this has, but nevertheless there will be change. And we do need to take into account those changes before we just automatically assume that everything's still the same as the local plan was when it was first put into place. I'm saying to you, and so is Councillor Heseltine, that this has happened. This change is going to continue. We are still going to have visitors. I firmly believe that to be true, as does Ingleton Parish Council, and as does, incidentally, my other ward member. So I would like to move to the vote, and I'd like to move to vote on the earlier indications as to what my belief was in terms of the reasons for doing that. Could that be acknowledged, please?
Right. You want me to go to ask Miss Davis to just go through the reasons? Ms Muscroft, who's the case officer, has indicated that she wanted to speak. Yeah, can you?
I will keep it very short.
I'm sorry, yes, yeah.
Sorry. That's fine. Just through you, Chair, it was just for clarification in terms of the end dwellings being constructed, whether they are affordable in terms of being on site in their many forms. That's a decision that the property team, if it had been approved, haven't made a decision on yet. That would be something that would go before the policy team, who would then make a decision in terms of whether they're full 100% affordable or shared ownership or something along those lines. So I think the end disposal of those dwellings hasn't actually been firmed up yet. In terms of whether the car park and its loss was considered as part of the local plan, I've just, while everybody's been debating it, just looked at a local and an email, and the planning inspectorate did ask for evidence in terms of the usage of the car park as part of the local plan. The evidence was provided to the planning inspectorate in terms of his examination and was accepted, and hence that's why the car park was then put forward for residential accommodation. Just thought I'd just provide that bit of clarity for members.
Thank you for that. That's good to get that early on. Councillor Brown and Councillor Welsh. I'm not sure who was first.
I was just going to ask whether, in light of Mr. Watson's comments, is exactly the ones I was going to make, we could withdraw the bit about lorries parked overnight, because that must have been considered.
Yes. Because Mr. Watson was referring only to HGVs, not to other vehicles, as far as I understand it. If that's wrong, I'm sure he'll let us know. Councillor Welsh.
Very briefly, Madam Chairman, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that this is a joint application with the JVC company Teleco we're in partnership with, allegedly. Now, bearing in mind that, and I can understand fully reasons to be very careful against an appeal, I would have serious concerns working with a joint venture company that was going to appeal or lodge an appeal against the council and the council planning committee, of which it's supposed to be in joint working relationship with. I would think that would cast serious doubts on it. There may not be a planning material reason or consideration, but I think that's something that should be taken into consideration. Would we want to work to somebody that would want to appeal against decisions when we're a joint company? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you for that, Mr. Strickland. And then that's it, no more. And
Chair, thank you. I'll try and keep it brief. Yeah, I think first of all we just need clarification on that final element of the reason for refusal around HGVs as to whether members are content to take that off or not in light of the comments from the planning officer. I think overall, given the comments that have been made by the planning team, it's probably difficult to be optimistic with respect to any appeal in terms of a refusal on this. It's difficult to be optimistic, if I can just put it like that. It is a matter for members. Members have heard the discussions, they've had the advice from the planning team. I just think members need to be very careful before they take the decision, but I'm sure they will be, Chair. Thank you.
thank you for that. Okay, so with the HGV element removed, our Councillor Liss, I just want to clarify with you, do you still want the displacements of vehicles but take out the HGV element of displacement of vehicles onto the highway? So you want to retain that? Right, so now we're going to finalise, no more debate, we're going to finalise the reason. Let's see what Ms Davies has managed to get together out of all that. Gosh, I don't envy you. And I just want to add that having sat through one of the an appeal a couple of weeks ago, I do want to express the difficulty that the planning team have during an appeal, and that we do respect that. we do understand how difficult it is. But anyway, Ms Davis, you want to give us the reason for refusal, please, that we're voting on?
Yes, Chair. So it's been proposed and seconded for refusal, and it is because the circumstances have changed since the local plan was adopted, and losing a car parking, a village asset, this will have an adverse economic effect on Ingleton, and also an undesirable effect of removing the well-used car park would mean, and the lack of a suitable alternative parking would mean displacing vehicles onto the highway. So that's taken out the HGV elements, but just refers to car parking in general.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Liss, is that, are you, sorry, is that the reason for refusal, that you want to go forward to the
Yes, and I
vote?
do apologise to members. It appears that I'm not supporting their assistance. I do appreciate what you're trying to do, but my belief is that those are the reasons that we've given are reason enough for this application to be refused.
Thank you. Councillor Heseltine, you concur with Councillor Liss as seconder. You're muted, Councillor Heseltine.
Yes.
Thank you. So it's proposed and seconded. We've heard the reason for refusal. We're going to go to the vote now. Ms Davis, would you like to take us through the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So if I can start with you, Chair, please.
It's awful having to go first, isn't it? Yeah, I just want to express that this is extremely difficult, and I respect the local view, but I also respect the view of the of Mr. Watson and the planning team, and our legal advisor. But I also respect that the local plan can't be tablets of stone. Things change, and maybe in the future, and maybe in the future, well, there will be a review of the local plan in the future. I am finding this extremely difficult, but I'm going to go with the local view, and I'm going to support refusal.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brown.
On those grounds of refusal have been put forward, I'm for refusal.
Councillor Heseltine.
For refusal.
Councillor Liss.
For refusal.
Councillor Morell.
For refusal.
Councillor Place.
For refusal.
Councillor Pringle.
For refusal.
Councillor Rose.
You're muted.
Apologies. Refusal.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
With that, for refusal.
Councillor Sutcliffe. You're muted, Councillor Sutcliffe.
Yes, I'm with you now.
Okay, thanks.
Reluctantly for refusal. I think it'll go to appeal and we'll lose it, but notwithstanding that, against.
So you're for refusal?
Indeed, yes.
Okay. Councillor Welsh.
For refusal, just on a point of information, Madam Chairman, the advantage of having my surname is by the time it gets to me, the decision's been made. Oppositions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
So that recommendation to go go for refusal against the officer's advice has been carried, Chairman, unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So it's 4:40. I'm going to go on. I'm not going to take a break. You'll be pleased to know, because we've only got one more application. Unless anybody particularly needs a comfort break, we can have a very quick comfort break. Otherwise, I'm going to go for the next application. Okay.
Chairman, Councillor Shuttleworth had his hand up.
Councillors, thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth, do you want to have a quick break?
Very short comfort break would be very welcome, Chairman. Yes.
Okay, right. Okay. Under the circumstances, a very quick, a 5-minute break. Hannah, can you put the sign up and make sure can everybody make sure that they mute themselves as well, please?
Yep, just one moment.
Okay, are we all back? Councillor Place is missing. Councillor Liss is missing. Councillor Welsh is missing.
I'm here. I can't see myself though.
Oh.
Ah, hoorah, here we are. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor Sutcliffe's missing. Councillor Welsh is missing. Councillor Place is back. Councillor Rose, I'm just going to just mute you. Right, Councillor Welsh is back. Thank you. It's Councillor Sutcliffe to come back. Councillor Heseltine, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Sutcliffe, are you back? Councillor Sutcliffe? Councillor Sutcliffe, are you back? Councillor Sutcliffe, are you back yet? Sorry, everybody, we're just waiting for Councillor Sutcliffe to rejoin us.
Takes longer to make a cup of tea in Coniston Cole, Madam Chairman.
He obviously lives in a very big house. Has gone for a takeaway. Okay. Councillor Sutcliffe, are you there yet?
Chair, I'm just conscious that it's been live streamed, and I don't know how long you want to wait for Councillor Sutcliffe, because I'm also conscious that if he doesn't listen to all of the debate, then he won't be able to vote either.
Yes. Yeah.
It is a major application, is it not?
It is. I'll try giving him a call and see. Right, he'll be with us in 2 seconds, he said.
Tick.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Great, thank you. Right. So we're going to the officer's presentation, and I think it's Miss Muscroft again, is it?
It is indeed, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sharing my screen.
Mhm.
Right, Chair, if you can just confirm that you can see the presentation.
Yes, I can. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Right, yep, I'm going to present the second item on the agenda today, which is seeking approval of matters reserved at the outline planning permission stage, reference 2017/18237. Now, that original permission granted the principle of development on this site and also the access in and out to the site. That proposal also dealt with things like drainage, affordable housing, etc. Most of the things that we will not touch on today. It also set out that within this application, all members are dealing to consider is the appearance, landscaping, layout, and scale. The best way to think about it is that this application is a detailed conditions application as set out on the original outline permission. So if you look at the outline permission, condition number 3 required the developer to provide details in terms of appearance, landscaping, layout, and scale. And this is what this application is dealing with mainly, okay? This is the projects that they're going to be dealing with. So just wanted to lay that out. It's not as a normal planning permission. You are just approving the details in terms of those 4 elements. Right, so to go into detail. Right, so the first slide we've got is the red outline, which shows the boundary of the site. The outline permission approved, as I mentioned previously, was the principle of development on this site and also the access. This also included the provision of a new footpath up in this top area here out onto the A6131 as well. Okay, so that was all approved.
Madam Chairman, before we proceed, could we have clarification on Miss Muscroft's first statement, please? I'm particularly looking at page 30, paragraph 711, if members will turn to that, where the officer note says, a reserved matters application may not revisit issues of principle. Planning permission has already been granted at the outline stage, subject to various conditions. Matters of school healthcare provision fell outside the scope of the original permission and cannot be introduced at this reserved matters. Well, if we weren't allowed to discuss it at outline stage and can't discuss it this afternoon, when can we discuss it?
Okay, yeah, I understand that.
It doesn't make sense. Certainly, matters of any infrastructure is of the highest importance, particularly when public funds have been so diminished.
Okay, so well, if we let's listen to the presentation, and then we'll take that issue immediately after the presentation.
Thank you. It's a matter of principle.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine, Councillor Hester, no problem at all. So as just to recap, this is the red outline for the previously approved outline permission. That approved the principle of development, and it also approved the access in and out of the site and also the provision of a new footpath in this area here. Now this slide here is just looking at the site using Google. So again, you just to look at it in terms of the actual site we've got here with the red outline. This is the main road that's coming in through here, and then we've got the other main A1631 up along through here. You've got a banking of trees in this area here, which will be retained. There's also another just outside the site in this area here. You've also got these trees here, which front onto the main road, which will also be retained. The site itself has a little beck that runs through this area down through here. And members will see as we go through the drawings later on, all the development in terms of residential development has been positioned so it's outside of that area. That's in line with the Environment Agency's comments in terms of the outline application and what they required in terms of that site. The next couple of slides are just some photographs of the site. So you're looking down, you can actually see that the site does drop away down to the bottom, down to the beck, where it kind of flattens out a little bit in this area here. And then this is one just looking across the site. In the distance, you can see the Elsie Croft development there. This is the site of the Airedale one that we did just, Airedale we did just recently. And then that's the other part of the site, which will be coming forward later on for development as well within the local plan. So the proposed layout that we've got in front of us, again, has been informed by the requirements of the policy that we've got in terms of that. So we've got in terms of the actual layout. So let's look at layout, which is one of the main things that was put forward. We've got the access coming in through the main one that was approved to outline, travelling through the site in terms of that. So we've got good movement of vehicles in terms of all sizes, so we can get emergency vehicles and everything else through there. The layout is laid out in such a way that it has an open feel to it. Properties are spaced between the sites to ensure that all occupants of there have a good standard of private amenity area within that site as well. The site has included some green buffers as per outlined within the policy. So we've got a green one here, and that comes down to this area down here. There is also some open space area provision in through the middle here and down through this area, down through here as well. Again, that's meeting the requirements as set out. You've also got the woodland area here, which will be retained. And there'll also be some footpaths going through there, down through the site, through the open space that's also being provided in this area here. So this internal layout is a more kind of formal layout, but it has been ensured that as I say, everybody has ample private amenity space and opportunity to move around. It's easy to walk through the site, and with the provision of the new footpath through here, that will connect up with the existing footpath, and residents will be able to walk down into the site, into the town itself. So in terms of the layout, it's considered that the layout is acceptable in terms of this proposal. In terms of the scale of the dwellings, and I have got some slides later on, so I'll be able to go through that with a little bit more detail for you. The proposal is going to, due to the tomography of the site, we'll be providing both 2-storey and some 3-storey dwellings in terms of the local tomography of the site. Now, as with the other developments we've had recently with similar tomography, the 3-storey developments will be tucked into the middle. So as you view the site from outside, and to a certain effect within the site, it would be very difficult to work out which ones are the 3-storey dwellings within that, the development. But I do have some sections, so you'll be able to see that as well. Now, in terms of the internal spacings of the properties, it is considered that the dwellings themselves provide residential accommodation for occupants that come to the properties, and there's enough spacing between those properties to ensure that any future occupier of these properties do not experience any loss of privacy or amenity. So again, the site layout has that spacing between it. The proposal will provide 281 parking spaces, and highways have been informed and have reviewed all the information and have not raised any objections. As outlined within the officer's report, the conditions that were imposed on outline permission still remain in force, and the developer will need to comply with those before moving any further on with the development. In terms of the density in the mix, the proposal is informed to be meeting that requirement. So it meets policy SP3, excuse my teeth, it's been a long day. So turning into the provision of affordable housing, this was all confirmed in terms of the outline permission. So it is providing 30% of affordable housing, which was written into the Section 106 agreement. And the deed of variation now tightens that up in terms of the provision and phasing of that development and also their location. Now, with the help of the strategic housing team, the affordable housing is scattered throughout the development. So to give an idea, you've got some up in this area at the top of the site. You've got some down here. You've got some more in this area here. You've got some over here, and there's some more at this area. So you've got a good, and that's just to give you an indication of some of the properties that are affordable. But the strategic housing team have had a look at that, and they're quite satisfied that that is acceptable in terms of their layout, etc. Now there's a lot going on in this slide, so I do apologise for that, but it is a very nice detailed one in terms of the proposed landscaping. So in terms of the landscaping, we've got this nice green buffer towards the main road up at the top here. Then there's a little bit more as we're going round through the site in terms of this. Turning round and going down this long barrier here, we've got another green corridor down through here that carries on a little bit down through here. And then this area down here is significantly open and contains quite a significant area of open space, as well as this area here. Now, the council's open space officer has been consulting with the developer with this one quite extensively since we got the application in, and she's quite happy now with the provision and the layout of this particular area. And again, that meets the requirements as set out within the outline permission and the conditions and the section 106 agreement that specified those details. As members can see, there is the footpaths that are proposing through the site. So again, helping through the people moving through the site and enjoyment of the site is coming through and then out through the main one. There is a main footpath that's also going through the site, which the next slide will show you again. So this is just to give members some idea in terms of some of the infrastructure that will be within the play areas we've got. So as I mentioned, the open space officer has reviewed all of this, been in discussions, and she's quite happy in terms of the provision for the differing ages in terms of the site. Similarly with this area that's down at the bottom area, which is for more older children, again, she's quite happy with the details and the management of these areas as well, which will all be written into the deed of variation, which will be attached to the section 106 agreement. This is just to show you the main footpath that's going to be going through the site. So again, we've got that permeability through the site, as well as the other little footpath that will run through the area down in this section through here. This is just a site section one. So the slide up here is to give you an indication of where we're looking down through. So section one, we're looking down, and as you can see, it's very difficult. You get to this point, the two bigger sets of houses are set down at the lower bottom. So as you would look at them from up here, you would be very difficult to notice that they would have any scale. And it's actually from the other side, they're kind of like split dwellings in terms of that respect. And again, similarly, you can see from this one how they sit quite nicely within the landscape to ensure that they're not visually dominant within the surrounding area. The next couple of slides are to give you an idea in terms of the mixture of differing designs that the developer has put forward throughout the site. The developer has also incorporated the use of materials that respond to the character of the local area. We have got a condition just to make sure that we have final say on those materials. And also, as quoted, the affordable housing will also be constructed using the same materials as the private dwellings, just to make sure that they fully integrate with the overall appearance of the actual development. Again, some of the other dwellings that are being proposed on the site. And then this one is just to show you one of the split dwellings, which is also proposed within the site due to the changes in the level. It's also important to notice that the development has taken opportunities to deal with sustainable design and construction, which in terms of there is a sustainable assessment, which is available to view online. But that document does set out the energy calculations that they're going to be looking for, but also the fact of the different materials, the energy efficient technologies that are going to incorporate, the good sense of build in terms of ventilation, air tightness, installation, etc. All the properties will also be provided with an electric charging point as well, and will have room for bicycle storage as well. In addition, the buildings would also be built to meet Part L of the building regulations. So members, in terms of that, the proposal before you is to approve the details in terms of the landscaping, the scale, the appearance, and the layout of the proposal, and is recommended for approval subject to the additional conditions and a signed deed of variation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I said that we would return to Councillor Heseltine's query about page 30 of the officer's report. The officer's note at 711 regarding matters of school/healthcare provision fell outside the scope of the original commission and cannot be introduced at this reserved matters approval stage. The councillor's query is, when can it be discussed? So,
if I could add to that, Madam Chairman, please.
Certainly, Councillor Heseltine. Yeah.
The identification of the needs of infrastructure over the short and medium term, and the requirement of the developer to make a realistic contribution for these needs is a matter of principle. Some aspects of, well, not particularly infrastructure, but open space and play provision are always funded under the Section 106 agreement. But to say that neither at outline stage nor detail stage can we take into account health matters and particularly education matters, well, to a member, we're trying to work within a democracy, we're being silenced on that. I'm aware that £15,000 for highways was agreed at the outline stage, but since that outline stage, the safety of the A59 junction, which has the worst fatality record of any junction in North Yorkshire, is now seriously being pursued by all agencies involved. North Yorkshire County Council, Highway Department, Highways Agency, North Yorkshire Police, members at Skipton Town, Craven District Council and the general public, and that is being realistically pursued. £15,000 might pay for a survey or part of a survey, but a significant, substantial contribution from a development that is within a stone's throw of that fatal junction ought to be put forward. Instead of what was going to be a few cosmetic improvements, white lining and such like, we're now pursuing a roundabout which will be somewhere between £1 and £2 million. So these substantial developments in Skipton ought to be making a substantial contribution to safety.
Okay, thank you.
Matter of principle, matter of life and death.
Okay, thank you for that. So, are you adding that A59 highways issue to your the issue of school and healthcare as well? Are you asking?
Very much so. That's a changed circumstance from when we debated it outline. The principle of development on the site we've accepted and properly so. And I supported the principle of development, although somewhat reluctantly, because we are being very much developed in Skipton. But what we shouldn't agree is that a development for 137 houses can get through this infrastructure requirement with a very, very, very minuscule contribution to the needs of infrastructure in Skipton. I'll leave it for officers to respond and members to debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heseltine. Mr. Watson, I'm going to come to you. Are you the right place? Or Miss Muscroft is raising her hand. You decide between the two of you which wants to respond to that.
I'm happy to respond to Councillor Heseltine's comments. I do understand members' feelings in terms of this proposal, but I just thought I'd try and kind of set it out again in terms of it. The outline permission was determined in line with the development plan at that time. That development plan had in it policies that related to open space and affordable housing contributions. It didn't have any policies in place in terms of education or healthcare provision. Hence why at the outline stage, we were unable to enforce or request for additional contributions in that line. It would have been considered as not appropriate to do that because we wouldn't have had a policy basis to back that up. It wouldn't have been lawful to actually do that. That permission was granted with the subsequent conditions as set out within the officer's report. It also set out that when the reserved matters came forward, it could only deal with the 4 issues that are outlined within the report. It cannot deal outside of the scope of the reserved matters. So we are defined by the reserved matters itself and how it is set out. As I mentioned right at the beginning, a reserved matters is a detailed condition application. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but what members are seeking to do is to approve the details in terms of, is the landscaping, etc. Is the scale of the developments, etc., acceptable? Is the design acceptable? And I can't remember what the other one is now, it's gone out of my head, but the 4, that is what you're looking to determine, is are those 4 elements acceptable or not? Unfortunately, that is all we can consider. We cannot now, even though we have the new local plan, we cannot go to a developer and ask for education or highways contributions because it's not a planning permission that you are granting today. You are only granting approval of the details that were defined by condition 3 on the outline permission. The difference would be, and I think this is where we might need to look at it, if the application today as a I would be there with Councillor Heseltine asking for all those additional contributions because I would have the policies behind me and the mechanisms to be able to do that. We don't have that with the reserved matters. We can only deal with the 4 elements that are in front of us at the moment. In terms of the highways contribution, just to finish on here, if it came forward as a full application, a contribution to highways isn't one of the key principles as set out within the local plan. It doesn't mean we couldn't potentially request something, but it would mean that the developers may not have to agree to that. That's one area that we would need to have a look at in the future. But as I said, this application is a reserved matters. It's for members to consider the 4 elements that we've outlined within the report. And unfortunately, we cannot introduce new issues and elements into the consideration of this proposal as they are outside of the scope of this reserved matters. I hope that's been clear. If there's any further clarification, I'm happy to do it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Strickland, you've got your hand up. So you're nodding there in approval.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would just endorse the comments that have been made by the planning officer in respect of this issue. Obviously, I understand the desire from members to get infrastructure contributions. I think we all understand the situation with regards to that and the importance of that issue. The difficulties are really as have been set out by the planning officer in the sense of the context of it and the difficulty that we're in, given that this is a reserved matters application, which really constrains in terms of what we can do. So the bottom line is, as set out, we are not in a position to request further contributions on the back of this reserved matters application. Hope that's helpful, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so we've heard from the officers. Now,
could I ask, Madam? Could I ask, Madam Chair? Could I ask then, with that explanation forward, that as a matter of urgency, Craven District Council revisit this area? I'm sure if members were aware that the previous guidance given us led us to this situation, then it's a situation that is not acceptable to members, and certainly it's not acceptable to the public. And could Craven District review its policy on the matter. And certainly
you
on
for
the
that.
guidance.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mr. Watson, as head of planning, is there any way, can you make a note of that? Can you bring that forward? Can you take it somewhere?
The simple answer is no. The reason why the simple answer is no is because what you're dealing with this afternoon is, as the case officers are explained, an application for the approval of the matters, not the planning permission. The planning permission has been granted. Planning permission is the outline permission. And even if you ended up with a situation of saying, let's review it, even if you wanted to review the local plan, and don't forget that this is an allocation under SKO 88, and the parameters that are set in SKO 88, that is embodied in the and reflected by the outline planning commission. So I'm sorry, Councillor Heseltine, no point reviewing it, because the only way that it could be reviewed if this decision wasn't taken, but you've only got to decide it on the 4 points that has been set up. You could only review the situation in review of the local plan, and it wouldn't change the situation, because on one step beyond the local plan, we've actually got a planning permission on the site. And that's the important thing members must understand, and we cannot revisit the situation beyond the terms of the outline plan.
I hear what you're saying, sir, but due respect, I was asking for a review on the guidance that took us to that conclusion in the local plan, because that certainly wasn't my interpretation of what was in the local plan. But that seems to be the outcome, and the outcome is not satisfactory. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Chair, if I can just clarify for members, I think the problem at the minute is this is a matter of law. It's not a matter of policy. It is a matter of law in terms of how we process this application and what the council can ask for. And it is the law that sets the position that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so
the policies have to be put in place for the law to apply itself, and it's the policies where the principle comes in. Mr. Strickland, sir.
Oh, okay, Councillor.
Could we move on, please?
Yes, yeah, we are moving on. So we have, we've listened to the officer's presentation. The next stage is to listen to the speakers. As far as I'm aware, we don't have a parish council representative. Ms. Davis, is that correct? No one from the parish council has indicated to speak?
No, no, that's correct, Chair.
Right. Sorry about that. That was a double negative.
Sorry.
So we have the a representative for the objectors, and that is Karen Darville. So welcome, Karen Darville. You have 5 minutes to speak. Would you're already unmuted. Would you like to introduce yourself before you give us your presentation, please?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Karen Darville. I'm a concerned local resident and just a humble layperson with all these planning matters. And at the risk of frustrating all those legal opinions and what I can and can't say, I too had wanted to talk about infrastructure, even though I understand now that it's outside of what you're considering, because I also noticed point 7.11 of the officer's report regarding schools, and that it was something that was a matter that fell outside the scope of the original permission and cannot be introduced now. But I also noticed that in 2017, North Yorkshire County Council Education Authority had submitted a comment as a statutory consultee regarding this application, and that response showed that this development would require 35 additional school places at Water Street or at Parish as the catchment schools. and that this additional requirement led to a shortfall of 125 places in total, and that a contribution was sought from the schools of almost £500,000, 475,860. I understand what you're saying is that it's too late to discuss that now, but I just would, for one person, like to be on record to say that that's what the Education Authority said back in 2017. And to quote the phrase of today, circumstances have evolved. I don't understand that the consultation, the identified need for places and the contribution sought is out of scope in 2017. I don't understand why it's not just as relevant now. And I just wondered if the members of the committee, clearly some are not satisfied that this important consultation about local school places, whether that has been adequately considered at any stage. The original reason that I wanted to speak was with regard to highways, and Councillor Heseltine's stolen my thunder a little bit there as well, because over the last 10 months I've been involved in discussions and developments on the Bailey and the A59, A65 junction and safety improvements there. I recently organised and attended and participated in a meeting with highways, with the police and local road safety experts from the Institute of Advanced Motoring, and along with Councillors Heseltine and Soloway. And at that meeting, it was acknowledged by highways and police that this junction has a high number of people killed and seriously injured, and that neither the police nor the highways know of any other junction in North Yorkshire with similar casualty figures. The experts' preferred solution at this junction is a roundabout. This junction is in close proximity to this development. The estimated cost is put between £1 and £3 million. It's clear that a roundabout would need a feasibility study for which the funding of £15,000 from this development can be used and is set aside for that purpose. However, that £15,000 contribution was suggested by Highways in 2017. That's 3.5 years ago. And since then, there have been 2 further deaths at this junction. As discussions involving highways have moved on, highways have made clear that they are seriously considering and committed to safety improvements. I would like to ask whether highways have been reconsulted regarding this development in terms of safety and contributions from developers now that it's 2020. I'd also like to ask why a community infrastructure levy has never been brought forward by the council for what many might consider a more strategic improvement at this junction. This is set out in paragraph 3.28 of the Infrastructure Development Plan, which deals specifically with how infrastructure will be funded. I note that to date, according to Craven Council in October, no other CIL payments have been received, and I ask the committee to consider whether now is the time. In the 2018 Skipton Transport Plan in Table 5, this junction was acknowledged as a priority junction operating over capacity without improvement as a result of planned delivery. Circumstances have indeed evolved, and overcapacity without improvement applies equally to schools and the junction. And I wonder whether councillors will allow this to happen in their own community without considering contributions, whether that's law, principle, or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the next person is the applicant or applicant's agent. We have Emma Ridley from Pegasus and Brian Walsh, who's sitting in. Let me see. Oh, right. Emma Ridley, would you like welcome to the committee, and thank you for speaking to us today. You will have 5 minutes to speak, and if you would like to just say who you are, where you're from, and then give us your presentation, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you. I'm Emma Ridley, working for Pegasus Group and acting as agent on behalf of Stonebridge Homes for this application. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. As just said, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, Stonebridge Homes, in support of their proposals for the residential development on land at Horbank Field. Stonebridge Homes are a Yorkshire-based house builder, delivering high-quality homes of varying sizes and styles in both rural and urban settings. The Stonebridge team prides themselves in harmonising their developments with the surrounding environment, with preservation of natural features as a primary aim. This site presents the team's first development site within Craven, and they look forward to bringing it forward and introducing their residents to Skipton. We were pleased to see this application has been recommended for approval, with the officer's report acknowledging the scheme as a high quality, sustainable development, offering substantial public benefit in accordance with the Craven development aspirations. The application site forms an allocation within the adopted local plan, which contributes towards the delivery of identified housing needs for the authority. The principle of residential development has been established through outline consent for up to 140 dwellings granted in April 2019. This application seeks reserved matters for approval for appearance, landscape, layout, and the scale of development. The current proposal is for 137 dwellings, which equates to a density of 31 dwellings per hectare. This is in line with policy SP3 and is the most appropriate density that can be achieved for the site given the site constraints. The proposal includes the delivery of 41 affordable homes and 96 open market homes. The affordable homes comprise 1, 2 and 3 bed dwellings, with an increase in the number of 3-bed affordable homes to meet the affordable housing needs identified by council officers. The house types proposed include a mix of terraces, semi-detached and detached dwellings to reflect the scale and varied nature of the local area. This is supported by your officer, who confirms the development would be complementary to nearby dwellings and is a successful and well-designed scheme that meets local needs. We have noted that the council has a desire to become carbon neutral by 2030. Stonebridge Homes is working with Award Energy, who's provided information to demonstrate the proposed homes can reach the required level of energy efficiency in terms of reduction in carbon emissions, energy demand and water consumption. Further to this, the proposals include electrical vehicle charging points for all properties. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the proposals comply with the outline permission, with all properties being located outside of flood zones 2 and 3. The full package of detailed drainage information will be submitted to satisfy the pre-commencement conditions attached to the outline for approval by the lead local flood authority. This will demonstrate that the proposals will not have any impact on flood risk on or off-site and will be designed in accordance with the North Yorkshire County Council's SUD design guidance. Extensive discussions have also been held with Yorkshire Water through the course of this application with regards to the existing water main that runs through the site. Yorkshire Water are in full support of the current proposals. The scheme will deliver a number of public benefits on and off-site. Off-site financial contributions will be made towards Sandylands playing fields and outdoor facilities, Middletown allotments and the highways improvements discussed. On-site benefits include the connection to the existing woodland areas to the south of the site by a series of interconnecting footpaths and 3 areas of formal and informal play space. The play spaces have been designed in collaboration with the Council's Open Space Officer and draw inspiration from the landscape context of the site, notably proximity to the Yorkshire Dales National Park and the industrial and quarrying history of the area. Each play space has a strong character, with natural materials to be used in the play equipment and the incorporation of the topography of the site to enhance play experiences. The play space include provision of a number of timber balancing bridges, a seesaw, swings and slides in the toddler and junior play areas, a cycle pump track, natural climbing boulders and a forest jungle climbing system as part of the active youth play. These designs offer a unique and attractive opportunity for play across the equipment and the landscaping features proposed. We trust that you will support your officer's recommendation for approval of this policy compliance scheme, which has been developed in full accordance with both national and local policies. If you've got any questions at this stage, myself and Brian Walsh, the engineering manager at Stonebridge Homes, would be happy to provide any further clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is the ward councillor. There are two ward councillors, Councillor Jacquin and Councillor Harbour, and we've got Councillor Jacquin here today. Councillor Jacquin, you aren't restricted as to how long you want to take.
Thank you. Whilst I was preparing this submission, I received a cold call from the committee chairman, who suggested I contact the case officer to seek check the points I wish to raise to the committee today. I'd like to thank the case officer for the clarifications that I received, some of which I feel members may wish to take into account in their decision making today. The proposal is for 137 houses, but I can't at the moment find out the number of which size, only the number of affordable and market houses. But as ward representative, I regularly receive comments that 5-bedroom homes are not needed. Obviously, the developer thinks a little bit differently. I realise that some things may be out of today's discussions, but I'd like to see somewhere an additional condition about affordable housing being built and occupied first, so the developers don't come back to a subsequent planning committee meeting saying that the affordable housing is unviable and requesting less is built. This aspect isn't to be discussed at the reserved matters application today, as affordable housing was determined at outline application. Regarding the access that was referred to earlier on, I welcome the extension of the pedestrian route at the southwest corner of the site. You will recall that the plan that you saw presented by the case officer earlier on didn't extend the footpath to Otley Road on the outline application, because there was land owned by a third party. I think it was Network Rail in that southwest corner. But I'd like to suggest that the footpath extension that is shown on one of the other maps is upgraded by the developer into a footway cycleway, so that the residents, if this reserve matters application is approved, could cycle along the flat Otley Road into Skipton Town Centre. Don't forget the development proposes a cycle storage facility, as specifically mentioned, on site at each housing unit. But I'm told that access was determined at the outline application and can't be revisited today. That sort of begs the question as to whether the footpath extension can be provided, although that means that the pump track and cycling that was mentioned by the developer's agent earlier on may not be accessible to the public highway called Otley Road. That also wonders whether condition 13 of the outline decision mentioned traffic signage and lighting on Otley Road can be met. The recommendation is to approve with conditions, but I feel that the committee should defer the reserve matters application and resolve the issues already raised. If the developers can return to the committee to reduce affordable housing numbers, they should have the chance to agree the timing of the buildability and the building of the affordable housing. The local planning authority aren't giving the councillors a chance to comment on the additional details that have been suggested by the developer. So in the future, I'd like to find out when and whether ward members and committee members can learn of the proposals from the developers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jacquin. So that concludes the speakers. Planning manager or case officer, do you have any comments or responses you'd like to make?
Yes, Chair, through you, just on a couple of points that Councillor Jacqueline quite kindly has raised. In terms of the affordable provision, as outlined, that was determined at the outline stage, and as outlined in an email to Councillor Jacqueline, the actual phasing of the affordable housing is now set out in the deed of variation. Right. So in terms of that, it will set it out. So I'll just read it for members so they are aware of it. So point 3.2 of the deed of variation requires not to allow, cause or permit occupation or sale of more than 32 of the market dwellings until the 20 affordable dwellings have been practically completed and transferred to a registered provider or the council at a transfer price. So that's kind of one phasing. And then there's another one that says not to allow, cause or permit occupation or sale of more than 64 of the market dwellings until the remaining 21 affordable dwellings have been completed. So there is a mechanism within the deed of variation to ensure that the affordable houses are provided. In terms of the footpath, I don't have any evidence before me that that footpath won't be coming forward. As Councillor Jacqueline kindly highlighted, condition 13 of the outline permission sets out the requirements and the necessary steps that the developer would need to do, and that condition still remains in force to this day, sort of thing. So I just wanted to make comment on those two particular points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Okay, so next step is to go to the debate, and we have Councillor Brown first and then Councillor Pringle.
Okay, going to take me a little while. I'm going to raise first the general questions that worry me that I know we can't address today, but I think do have to be mentioned, and then I'm going to move to the specifics. The whole issue of infrastructure really is very worrying. The population of Skipton at the 2016 official statistics was 14,923, about 15,000 people. That means roughly about 7,000 houses. We're scheduled to build 2,300 more. That's a major change to Skipton, and we've got about 1,000 of them underway at the moment. Something of that order. This is 137 of them, and for whatever reason, we've got no contribution to schools, no contribution to doctors, £15,000 contribution to a study on the roads, and no contribution to the sewer network. Now, I know we can't address this today, but either the Conservative Party's national planning policy has failed Skipton, or the way we've exercised our local planning has failed Skipton. One or the other has taken place, and it's seriously worrying. I'm going to move to the specifics that we can address today and are allowed to influence in the situation. And I have to say that the proposal actually, the specifics of the layout, there's quite a lot that I like, because it's going to sound like I'm critical. So I'll say there's quite a lot that I like for a start. And I'll also say I'm going to propose approval subject to conditions that I'm going to outline. The first issue I want to raise on the specifics is that dealing with climate change, etc., paragraph 9.44, policy ENV3, criteria requires that new dwellings contribute towards dealing with climate change, including opportunities to reduce energy use, water use, carbon emissions and minimise waste. Condition 7 requires an energy statement that addresses that, and it must be submitted to and approved in writing by the planning authority. We got that submitted on the 19th of November. It's the 23rd of November today as I speak. So we had 4 days to consider that. I don't consider that acceptable at reserved matters stage, and I want it referred back and looked at in detail and studied more carefully. In specific nature, I'm concerned that there are statements in the energy statement that were submitted like all dwellings will be heated with highly efficient gas boilers. Well, last week we had the government telling us it was intending to phase out gas boilers. We're building new houses entirely with that, with not a single one being fitted with anything innovative like solar panels or heat exchange unit. I don't think that's very impressive, and I want to see that energy statement challenged more carefully and before we actually just wave it through. Second thing, I think the baseline they're testing it against, the comparative test, is a seriously weak test. It's set out against the minimum requirement set out in 2013. Well, an awful lot's moved on in building technology since 2013 in terms of sustainability, and our policy requires new dwellings to contribute towards dealing with climate change, things like BREEAM excellent standards, etc. I just think we should be referring back to that energy statement. So that's my first condition, that should be looked at in more depth and come back to the committee. Second thing I want to look at, it should be easier to address, which is on the biodiversity front. Again, there's much good practice in what's there. I like the mix of trees, like the orchards. There's still some issues to resolve, though. Policy ENV 4/6 says development should achieve benefits in biodiversity that are equal to or, where possible, exceed the biodiversity prior to approval. Paragraph 9.30 says that detailed matters will be secured via condition 18 in the outline approval. Condition 18 requires a habitat management plan to protect and enhance the watercourse, etc. And page 72 of the local plan says there's a requirement for a biodiversity appraisal to assess the existing conditions of the site, to be accompanied by a biodiversity mitigation plan. And I happen to think the developer can probably demonstrate that after finishing this site, it will be in a better state in terms of biodiversity than when they started. More trees, more opportunities for some of the water areas, etc., quite promising. But the bits of the plan I would love to see that I don't know anything about. Are swift boxes included? Are bat boxes included? Are there hedgehog runs in the proposals? None of those difficult or expensive to provide, but it should be there. So the second condition I want to put on is that the approval should be subject to submission of a suitable biodiversity mitigation plan that includes swift and bat boxes and hedgehog runs. The fourth thing that I want to address, I think, is more. Third thing I want to address is more difficult. We have approved the affordable housing contribution, and I think that's all determined. Have we though approved what nature of those affordable houses will be in terms of the way they're equipped? Our policy H2BI and H2BIII says approval should be subject to the local plan conditions of age-related and sheltered being 25% of affordable houses, and assisted living, extra care for people with disabilities, etc., should be 15% of affordable. Have we seen confirmation that those conditions have been met? And can we do? Is that not a reasonable thing to ask at reserve matters stage? Since it was determined there should be these affordable houses, surely we should be looking at this stage of the detail and satisfying ourselves that that local plan condition is met. So I've got those three conditions. And Andrea no doubt advised me on the last of those. And I apologise to Andrea for not asking that in advance of the meeting. I should have done. Sorry. So basically, I'm proposing approval subject to three conditions, depending on Andrea's advice.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Brown. And Ms Muscroft, did you get all that? I was busily trying to write it all down. If you want to take.
Yeah, I will do my best, Councillor Brown, to answer all your questions. If I miss anything, please let me know. Point one, in terms of the sustainability or energy report that has come through, just to flag out, this is really just a potential of what can be achieved on the scheme, and it outlines some of the reasonable steps that the developer will potentially take in terms of that development. Hence why we have the condition that you've kindly outlined within the report that requires them to come back with more firm details so that we can see exactly what steps that they need to do. When that document comes through, That will be done in terms of consultation with the building regulation team to make sure that what's actually within that document is sufficient to meet the requirements of that condition and to help the council achieve its carbon neutral and climate change aspirations in terms of that. So that's where condition number 7 comes through.
Can I just go into that briefly? I think that's
Hang on,
right. Okay.
Councillor Brown, can we just, yeah, it's okay. Carry on, Ms. Muscroft.
That's fine. So that was the sustainability one. In terms of the biodiversity, yeah, you're right. In terms of the original outline permission, that did look at a condition 18, which was looking at mitigating the development and things like that, and looking at appropriate biodiversity enhancements. So in terms of policy condition 18, sorry, we would be looking for more firmer details, as you kindly said, what bird boxes, swift boxes, etc., would also be provided in terms of that. But I'm happy if if you feel that you would like to add an additional condition, I don't see any problems in terms of that. If you want to firm that up a little bit more in terms of that. Now, the last one, I've had a mental block. What was the, sorry, Councillor Brown, what was the last point that you wanted to raise?
The inside the affordable housing, that the consideration of those for the elderly and those for people with disabilities.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brown. You are right in terms of that. The actual level of the provision and what kind of provision is something that is determined by the strategic affordable housing officer. She's been the ones that have been in discussions with the developer in terms of what level has been provided. So in terms of this application, it is something, unfortunately, that is outside of the scope of this application, as it's already been determined in the outline and then formalised by the strategic housing officer. So I hope that's helped in some respect.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brown, do you want to add a condition, the condition you asked about the bat boxes and swift boxes and the hedgehog runs? Would you like that to be added to this?
What I want is actually what I actually proposed, that the two documents come back to this committee when they are finalised.
Yeah,
I think it's much more appropriate that we should see detail and have a chance to comment on them and approve them, and that they're satisfied off-piste.
I'm conscious about deferring applications, but
I'm not suggesting deferment. I'm suggesting we approve it subject to those conditions, that it comes that those particular two aspects come back to this committee.
I'm going to ask Mr. Watson about this one. Mr. Watson, is there a precedent for that, or how would that affect the decision?
Chairman, it wouldn't. I think the situation with that is that the applicant is required to discharge the conditions on the outline permission and discharge the conditions, any conditions that may be imposed on the reserve matters submission. But we've got to be careful and not get to the stage of committee determining the discharge of conditions. It would become unworkable, because the time limits on when we have to discharge conditions, and there is potentially risk of a deemed discharge if we don't do it, and therefore I just can't bring it into the committee system. Rest assured, we will take those points on board, but it will have to be as a result of a submission for the discharge of conditions by the applicant, and then we've got to put those things correct. The only other point that I would make is that we've got to be very careful, and it goes back to the timing of the decision, because the outline planning permission has been granted, and it was granted under the 1999 plan. And I'd be very uncomfortable about trying to introduce, bearing in mind, members, I'm sorry to have to repeat it, but members must understand that this is a reserve matters submission, not an application for planning permission. And you should only be imposing conditions on the reserve matters submission that reflect the appearance. So that would enable us to consider, approval of the type of stone. the landscaping has been submitted, and that's obviously details. If there is further clarification on that, fine. The layout and scale is all that you're considering this afternoon, and you can't start and introduce further conditions in accordance with the new plan when the planning permission was granted under the old plan. Hope that clarifies it, Chairman.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So, so unfortunately, Councillor Brown, you can't have another condition, as I understand it. But there may be. Am I right, Mr. Watson, in saying that there may be scope within the what's it called?
Well, the scope, Chairman, to actually discharge the conditions that were imposed on the outline permission, and if that refers to biodiversity, which I believe from the case officer's position was the condition 18. If we are discharging those conditions, we can continue that forward, but you can't reimpose conditions referring to the new plan on a reserved matter submission.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Chairman, could I just ask you two committee members to approve that we go beyond 3 hours, because it's over 3 hours now, so it's just a procedural point, please.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask for a proposer for that, please? Thank you. Councillor Morell, you had your hand up pretty quick there. So that's been proposed, and anyone object? No, that's it. So that's carried.
Thank you.
You happy with that? Good. Okay. Where were we? I think Councillor Pringle, I think you were next. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then Councillor Shuttleworth, and then Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But before I go, Councillor Heseltine's been muted, and of course he has no way of indicating he wants to speak. So presumably,
Councillor Heseltine, he muted himself. He muted himself.
Was he?
So he should be, so he should be able to unmute himself.
Marvellous, thank you.
Councillor Heseltine did not mute himself. Either Zoom muted me or CDC muted me. But I've listened to every word that's been said, and I will get it unmuted if I ever want to speak again. But kick-off at Moor is approaching.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Not being a football fan, I have no idea. But anyhow.
My first point will be to thank the developers, because according to the figures that we've given in Ingleton on the viability assessment, they are giving 5 million quid's worth of affordable housing with this scheme. So that's quite good, and thank you. I have no problems with the scheme, but I do have a couple of issues, and I'm not entirely confident that we are being given the right advice. In 2018, the outline was approved with all matters reserved, except the principle of development and the access. That means everything else in my simple brain is still up for grabs. All matters reserved. We have a problem because if that's not the case, affordable housing wasn't mentioned in any of the 28 conditions of the decision notice. So the developer can theoretically go back and look at the question of affordable housing again. Now, I have a problem because I've got a document in front of me that says North Yorkshire County Council asked for a contribution towards schools of £475,000 relating to this scheme. And I have a local plan in front of me that on page 73 specifically says an education contribution needs to be made in respect of this particular site. I would really like to know, before we pass this application, whether I am right or wrong by way of external legal advice. Because if we pass it without the £475,860 that has been requested, and we've got a local plan that says there should be an education contribution. And when it was passed with all matters reserved except affordable housing, all matters reserved except the principle of development and the access, I'd like to clarify. I'd also like clarification on the highways position and whether we can ask for contributions towards a roundabout. Have we reconsulted, as the lady asked? Have we asked highways if they think 15,000 is enough, or do they want a bigger contribution towards a new roundabout to the A59, which has had 7,000 people on Facebook saying it's dangerous and it's about 200 yards from this access? And the final thing is, whether you like it or not, the SUDS position, the SUDS people have written to Crane District Council and said, I do not want you dealing with SUDS by way of condition. They were consulted on the first application and they wrote back and they were consulted on this application. On the first application, Mr. Watson chose to do SUDS by way of condition. And since then, there's a letter which has disappeared off Craven District Council's website only today, dated the 28th of June, in which the SUDS people said, we don't want you doing it by way of condition because looking at this scheme, the condition may be unachievable. If we are going to ignore that SUDS advice, we need a good negligence policy, because they have been absolutely clear, do not do it by way of condition. So unless we reconsult them, and I would suggest we defer this application and reconsult them, because if this site or anywhere else in Skipton floods and we've ignored their advice, according to the barrister that trained us last week, we will be up a gum tree without a paddle. So I'm not going to say too much more. All matters were reserved. Should we be looking at a £500,000 education contribution? Should we be looking at them helping to pay for the roundabout? And I'd like the SUDS situation sorted rather than dealt with by way of condition, which, as Mr. Watson quite rightly said, if it isn't sorted in the 8-week period, the fallback is that it's passed. Thank you.
Mr. Watson.
Chairman, can I just come back on it? I'm sorry to have to keep batting on with the same answer, but this application was determined under the 1999 plan. The 1999 plan did not have any requirements for education facilities, health facilities, or everything else. We've had this debate more than once, and I'm sorry to have to keep repeating to members, but that is a matter of fact. This application is determined. It's not retrospectively applied new local plan policies to an outline plan commission exists. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Muscroft.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, just for clarification, just for members, I've just been looking at the original report for the outline, and it does make reference in terms of education that they did ask for the amount that Councillor Pringle has kindly highlighted. But it's also very clear within that report that there is no policy basis to actually go for that contribution. So therefore, that's why we didn't do it at the outline stage. And again, also in that report, it makes it very clear in terms of highways, that highways came and asked for a contribution for the £15,000 towards the improvements at the junction of the A6131 and the A59. And we were able to do that and secure that via the Section 106 agreement. They have been consulted twice. I believe we sent an email to Councillor Pringle highlighting that, and to other members, that they have been consulted twice. They have reviewed the information and they are satisfied that the conditions imposed at the outline stage are sufficient to ensure that this development can move forward in terms of making sure there's no impacts in terms of highway safety. And they have not come back asking for any further monies in terms of that. In terms of the affordable housing provision, Councillor Pringle is quite correct that there isn't a condition on the outline commission. That is because it's included within the Section 106 agreement. and remains in the Section 106 agreement in terms of this new application. And as outlined previously, the provision of that and the phasing will be also included within the deed of variation in terms of it. Finally, on the SUDS issue, as some members may have realised, they did submit further information with the idea of trying to potentially discharge some of the conditions that had been imposed on the outline commission. With SUDS own response acknowledges that drainage is not a reserved matters item, because as we know, drainage can be like an engineering issue and you can engineer yourselves out of a drainage problem. So in terms of the SUDS, whilst that wasn't being able to get any agreement in terms of the information provided, the applicant still has the chance in terms of the previous condition imposed on the outline to come forward with the necessary details required to meet that condition, because the condition that's outlined in the officer's report that was imposed on the outline is a very comprehensive condition, and they can't move forward with the scheme without meeting that requirement. So, and we would do that within consultation with the SUDS one. So as I've outlined previously, for members today, it is really just those 4 key things, that is the landscaping, the scale, the appearance, and the layout in terms of this proposal, that members really need to keep in mind that that's what we're determining today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Councillor Heseltine, you've unmuted yourself. Did you want to speak? And I didn't notice when you did unmute yourself, so I don't know what order you were in.
No, I'm sat quite content.
Okay, thanks. Just checking.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Strickland, did you want to have a word?
Yes, just briefly, Chair, just to follow on from the comments from the planning team with regards to the education contribution. As has been set out in correspondence to the committee members, at the time when the outline application was passed, there was not a policy basis to require an education contribution. And as the planning officer has quite clearly indicated to the committee, that is not a matter which can be introduced now at this stage. So members are not in a position to require an education contribution while determining this reserve matters application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarification. Now I've got Councillor Welsh or Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Shuttleworth, I think you had your hand up first, did you? But,
I did. I think I did, Chairman, and then I lowered it and then I put it back up again in view of the ongoing discussion at the time. But if I could, please, two things. First of all, as you might have come to expect, whilst I understand what our officer has said about drainage details, the local lead flood authority have specifically said recommend refusal of the scheme, quite simply because it may well be that an acceptable scheme, should it be produced, will need a revised layout of the site. And it strikes me this is a simple case of putting the cart before the horse. However, I'll make that observation and move on. So the other issue is, has consultation been made with the Environmental Health Department and the arrangements to collect wheelie bins? Because here again, it strikes me that the layout isn't too accommodating in ease of that facility, both in its layout and also because of the slopes involved. And I just wonder if we have consulted with Environmental Health or the cleansing department. I believe they're a separate subsection facility. Because we did have this discussion for a fairly recent proposal at Dempsey, where we weren't satisfied that there were adequate arrangements for the turning of vehicles, and also one at Hellifield along Preston. Hellifield was a similar, Hellifield, there was similar concern, and I just wonder if we have consulted, because here again that might require a revised layout. Okay,
thank you for that. I'm going to ask Miss Muscroft if she would. I'm sorry I keep calling you Musgrave, and I've said this before. I've got an auntie who's called Musgrave, so I do apologise. So yeah, there's Councillor Shuttleworth is referring to flooding and drainage on your report 940. And I've got that highlighted as well, actually. And then the other thing would have environmental health been consulted.
Yeah, no, through you, Chair. Environmental health have been consulted in terms of the proposal, and we've had no objections in terms of that. In terms of the drainage, I've just pulled up their SUD's comments in terms of it. I just have to stress that the drainage is something that is dealt with at outline stage, and we are dealing with like the matters of, sorry to repeat myself, but the landscaping, the layout, the scale and the appearance. And the details that are required in terms of whilst, if I look at the SUDS things, which it is saying, it's about runoff and things like that, flow of the site. Well, those sorts of things, once you get down to the types of layout and details and things, are much easier to provide the flood alleviation with those necessary details and the drawings to be able to meet the requirements of that particular condition. And as it states right at the beginning, it acknowledges that drainage is not a reserved matter. So we have mechanisms in there. We have a condition which is on the outline, which requires the developer to provide the necessary details. And remembering this is a pre-commencement condition, so they have to meet that condition before the development can go ahead. And it may be that they may need to come back and do a variation to the scheme. They may not need to do a variation to the scheme. It may be sufficient once they've got all of the technical details available to give to the SUDS for that condition to be met. But as I say at the moment, we've got a condition in there. This application is only dealing with the 4 key issues that are reserved matters application relates to. The drainage is a matter that was outlined and has the conditions to deal with it. I think we just have to be, I think as we've mentioned previously, we just have to be very careful that we're not going into areas that really are outside of the scope of this application. So that was just those points there. And just through you, Chair, if I can, Councillor Pringle raised the thing about matters. It is set out within the development management as to what the details are in terms of an application. And it sets out very clear that the reserved applications are dealing with just appearance, means of access, which is one that's already been approved in this instance, the landscaping, the layout and the scale. That's what they mean by detailing. And that's why on an outline permission, you will have a condition that requires the developer to provide those details. So as I said, and I'm sorry, this is probably going on a bit longer now, as outlined at the beginning of the presentation, this is not an application seeking planning permission, as we rightly understand it. It is an application seeking approval of the detailed condition as outlined as number 3 on the original permission. I know it's not easy in terms of these types of application, but that's what members are looking at. Do you think the details that have been submitted by the applicant in relation to condition 3 on the original permission are acceptable or not? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was quite clear. Councillor Shuttleworth, I'm going to move on now.
I hear what's been said. I am not deliriously happy, but I shan't pursue the matter through.
No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I could pick up on 1 or 2 points that have been made. Going back to the education contribution, I remember there was another big housing application in Skipton probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And what always happened was the council asked for a financial contribution towards education, and they always paid up. Now with this particular one, I'm not going to name it, but members will know whereabouts it is in Skipton. The builders turned around and said, well, we're not paying it. You don't have to, it isn't in your policy. Oh, right, so that was the end of that. So even since then, nothing has happened, so we can't do. Bat boxes, swift boxes, hedgehog, we've had several applications where there's always turned around and says, no, you cannot introduce this later on in the day. Yet we still seem to try and get it introduced later on in the day. As far as the flood's concerned, issue, who's going to build some houses, 140 houses, where they haven't taken serious consideration about the drains? Otherwise they won't be able to sell them. It's quite simple, really. You look on the bottom of the bypass, all that money, what is being spent now, it's all on drains. I mean, it's quite obvious. Moving on with a lot of sympathy with some of the speakers and some of the comments, but at the end of the day, as the officer's quite rightly lined out, most of these things cannot be taken into consideration at this stage of the day. And the planning, I said exactly the same thing. And whilst I've got some sympathy, I think, for sake of clarity, and I've heard the odd proposal, but I haven't heard a seconder. So, for sake of clarity, I will move the officer's recommendation as stated and see if I can get a seconder, please. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Welsh. Would anybody like to
second that, Chairman?
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Sutcliffe. Okay, right, so we have Councillor Brown and Councillor Morell, and then I'm going to go to the vote.
Yeah, I just want to address this issue that introducing the issue of an energy statement or biodiversity is late in the day, and it's also not allowed at reserved matters stage or not normal. Let's be clear, we set out in the outline permission that those issues would be resolved and a statement would be presented to us at this stage. That is what we required outline permission. So we insisted on an energy statement under condition 7 and outline approval. So I'm not introducing anything late in the day that's illegitimate. I'm simply saying the statement that we asked to receive came in very late on the 19th of November and looks to me to be weak. And I don't feel comfortable with approving something I've had 2 days to look at and would wish to challenge in depth on a policy basis. The second area where I raised concern, again, it's something which was actually introduced at the outline stage we would resolve at this point, which is the biodiversity statement. And I do think the developer's done a lot to move towards achieving that, but I'm not. I think happy to just say, oh, it can be solved, and then we'll find out later. By the time we get to reserve matters stage, we should be told the detail, and if it says that there should be a biodiversity mitigation plan coming in, we should have it by reserve matters stage. Now, I'm going to withdraw my proposal and let Councillor Welch's go forward, because that's procedurally more sensible. But can we just please establish a principle? Both the energy statements and the biodiversity statement are important matters to resolve, and we need them resolved and brought forward in the paper and explained to us where we are before we go to, before we sign off on reserve matters. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brown. That's probably something that we could take, that discussion we could take outside of the meeting, but I see Ms Muscroft has her hand up. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I'm quite happy to take it outside of the meeting. That's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Morell, and then we're going to the vote.
Thank you. Regards this application, there's lots to be applauded, I think. So I'm fully supporting this. One note that I would make, it's perhaps unfortunate in public view that this developer has come forward with the full commitment to deliver affordable housing. And when we as a council come forward with our own application, however, we employ 2 independent or members of, whatever you want to call them, to produce 2 viability reports, wriggle out of providing any of our required affordable homes. So I just think that really does reflect badly on us, in the public eye. I just wanted to make that comment and to congratulate this applicant on giving a full commitment to deliver all of the affordable housing due on this site. Thank you.
Chair, can I just remind members, please, just to consider each of these matters on the merits? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, so we're going to vote now. It's been proposed by Councillor Welsh and seconded by Councillor Sutcliffe. Officer's recommendation of approval. Miss Davis, would you like to take us through the vote? If you do you need anything else before you do that?
No, Chair. I think Councillor Brown's withdrawn his earlier suggested amendments, so it's just purely we're voting on the officer's recommendation as set out, which is for approval as set out in the report, with the conditions attached as set out.
Yep, thank you.
So if I just call your names out, could you just say whether you're for, against, or you're abstaining, please? Chairman.
For.
Councillor Brown.
On the limited matters, we're called to vote on 4.
Councillor Heseltine.
Against.
Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor Morell.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
Abstain.
Councillor Rose.
For.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Abstain.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
For.
And Councillor Welsh.
For.
Thank you. That's carried. There's 1 against and 2 abstentions.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. So that concludes the schedule of plans. Thank you very much, everybody. The other items on the agenda are any other items? No items as far as I'm aware. And the date and time of the next meeting has been agreed for the 22nd of December. So I'd just like to thank everybody for attending, and we'll see you on the 22nd.